Chapter 923, Blacklight Virus versus White Zetsu Cells. The Blacklight virus slipped into what felt like an entirely new dimension, an otherworldly realm unlike anything in the physical plane. Ethan's heart pounded with equal measures of excitement and dread. This can't be real. What secret is he hiding in his body? He muttered, eyes wide with both fascination and uncertainty. Steeling himself, Ethan tightened his mental grip on the virus, attempting to guide its particles toward Obito's chakra nodes with surgical precision. Yet no matter how he adjusted his commands, the virus continued to mutate unpredictably, its movements growing more erratic each second, and occasionally threatening to rebound against its own host. Standing at the edge of the containment field, Wesker watched with a deepening frown. He'd known Ethan's Blacklight virus to be devastatingly powerful, but up against Uchiha Obito, even this bioweapon seemed ineffectual. The battlefield had become far more complex than he'd ever anticipated. As the virus writhed in its liminal state, Wesker began to consider other ways to tip the scales of this confrontation, or at least uncover more about the extraordinary abilities that lay hidden within Obito. Wesker studied Obito intently. "Ethan, your viruses may not be strong enough to beat him outright, but we can use them to map the limits of his body's defenses." He tapped a gloved finger on the console. "Let them burrow deeper and log every anomaly they encounter. We might uncover a vulnerability." Ethan's eyes lit up with determination. He drew in a steady breath and refocused, no longer driving the viral agents into a frontal assault, but guiding them covertly through Obito's physiology. In his mind's eye, the viruses fragmented into thousands of microscopic probes, slipping between muscle fibers, merging with nerve channels, exploring every tissue and meridian. Each probe transmitted data back to Ethan, pinpointing even the smallest irregularity. As the minutes ticked by, the fight reached a tense equilibrium. Obito, relying on his wood escape technique, still held the upper hand in their exchange of blows. Yet beneath his outward confidence, an unsettling sensation was spreading through his body, an itch at the core of his cells, as if something were gnawing at him from the inside. Obito paused mid-maneuver, brow furrowing. He scanned himself from head to toe, searching for the source of the discomfort, but all his vitals read normal. Nothing in his chakra network or physical structure hinted at intrusion. Still, the gnawing persisted. "What is happening to me?" he muttered, unease flashing in his eyes. Meanwhile, within the microscopic battlefield of Obito's body, the clash between the white Zetsu cells and the Blacklight virus was at its peak. The white Zetsu cells, remnants of Kaguya Otsutsuki's ancient power, harbored genetic fragments from the divine tree, a cosmic life form capable of spanning galaxies and drawing in the universe's very essence. These cells boasted astonishing regenerative abilities. They could adapt swiftly to changing conditions and form near-impenetrable defensive barriers. Yet even they buckled under the onslaught of the Blacklight virus. This pathogen was no ordinary invader. It was hyper-intelligent and perpetually evolving. In a matter of moments, it could analyze the host's cellular architecture and spawn tailored mutant strains to exploit any weakness. Inside Obito, the virus had taken on an almost self-aware purpose. No longer content with mere parasitism or wanton destruction, it probed every subtle fluctuation of energy in his body, seeking new ways to harness and amplify itself. Ethan watched the readouts with a steady gaze. Using the faint chakra currents in Obito's body as cover, the Blacklight virus had slipped into the tangled symbiotic web of white Zetsu cells and Obito's own flesh like a silent shadow. It didn't just record the energy flow patterns coursing through him, it also exposed a subtle alliance between the Zetsu cells and Obito's native tissues, a partnership that underpinned his tremendous strength. "If this were any ordinary pathogen," Ethan murmured, "the white Zetsu cells would have neutralized it long ago, but the Blacklight virus is in a league of its own." He tapped a few controls and brought up Alex's latest enhancements. Across multiple worlds, Alex had refined the virus into something far more potent than Ethan had ever anticipated. The white Zetsu cells themselves were mutated offshoots of the divine tree, a cosmic superorganism that spanned star systems and shrugged off most microbial threats. In this vast universe, no ordinary virus could lay it low. Ethan could only guess how many times those cells had already survived attacks far deadlier than this one. Yet the blacklight virus was different. It was the first to sow genuine chaos in the Divine Tree's lineage, slipping past defenses that had held strong against everything else. Ethan leaned back, mind racing. If the virus continued to exploit that hidden symbiosis, it could erode Obito's power from within, and, by extension, threaten the very balance of the forces he served. One question remained. How quickly could he and Alex counter this ghost in the machinery before it claimed more than just chakra? Uchiha Obito froze as black and red tendrils snaked around the wooden spike protruding from his arm. "What the hell is this?" he gasped, his voice betraying a hint of panic. He'd never encountered such a strange, overwhelming force. "Obito, report." Black Zetsu's voice slithered through his mind. "Your chakra, it's completely scrambled." Poisoned? Obito realized with a start that the thick fog surrounding them was laced with a powerful venom. His chakra flared chaotically, and he felt his body slipping out of his control. There was no choice but to escape the barrier or die. Mustering every ounce of strength, he burst through the poisonous mist and collapsed just beyond its edge. But the brief respite was fleeting. The toxin had already begun its merciless work. Obito's blood burned beneath his skin, then crimson finally broke free. It oozed from his nostrils, eyes, and ears, drenching his mask and robes in gruesome red. "We have to keep moving," he rasped, forcing himself upright. Black Zetsu gripped his arm, steadying him, and together they vanished into the shadows as the poison's relentless agony hammered at their senses. A tremor of pain shoots through Ethan's body, a warning flare ignited by the savage struggle between his white blood cells and the insidious blacklight virus. He staggers, every limb heavy with exhaustion, and for the first time he realizes he may actually be facing the end. Even White Zetsu, who has witnessed countless battles within hosts, recoils at the sight. The virus isn't just ravaging Ethan's flesh, it's leeching away his will, dissolving his very energy from the inside out. "Damn it," Ethan snarls, desperation sharpening his voice. He never imagined an unseen enemy could wear him down so completely. Deep within, the blacklight virus rages, ravenously consuming healthy cells. In response, the white cells unleash their most extreme defenses, igniting a frantic, life-or-death skirmish on a microscopic battlefield. But in this all-out brawl, Ethan is the one paying the highest price. His vision blurs, his knees give way. With a final shuddering breath, he collapses to the ground. "Ethan!" Black Zetsu's urgent cry echoes around him. "You can't die, Ethan." Black Zetsu's tone is frantic. If Ethan Uchiha falls here, their entire plan will collapse. With no time to waste, it signals to a nearby White Zetsu. "Hurry! We need aid now!" White Zetsu materialized almost at once. Rushing forward, he knelt beside Obito and asked, "What's happening to him?" Black Jue shot him a sharp look. "Now's not the time for questions. He's on the verge of possession, and if we don't act, Obito will die." Bai Zetsu crouched over Obito's limp form and began binding him with a series of chakra-infused wrappings. He grimaced at how tight the seals were. "This is unbearable," he muttered, adjusting the final knot. He straightened abruptly, voice low and urgent. "We have to neutralize whatever's invading his body before it's too late." Chapter 924. Cardo White Zetsu writhed in discomfort, but Black Zetsu noticed something remarkable. Obito Uchiha's chakra had suddenly stabilized. "Bring him back," Black Zetsu commanded without hesitation. Although Obito's vital signs were steadier, he remained unconscious, and that lingering poison was as potent as ever. What kind of toxin could resist their combined efforts to purge it? Nearby, Alex turned to Wesker. "Should we pursue him?" With the two of them linked by the blacklight virus, tracking Obito across the planet would be trivial. He wouldn't slip away unnoticed. "Not yet," Wesker replied. "Your virus can be neutralized, or even eradicated, by our target. Clearly, this world's defenses run deeper than we expected." Wesker knew the strength of Alex's blacklight strain firsthand. He'd tried to infect Alex with his own virus and found it consumed almost instantly. Yet here, against the people of this realm, even that formidable pathogen was powerless. The man they hunted wasn't ordinary, to be sure, but the unexpected resilience of this world's inhabitants was undeniable. Wesker had originally intended to unleash the T-virus worldwide, turning the entire population into mindless zombies. but he has since abandoned that plan. In this age, where microscopic threats can be detected and neutralized, he refuses to give his enemies any opportunity to probe his work, reverse engineer it, or strike at him directly. On the windswept coast of Wave Country, the former overlord Kato now lies low in a hidden bunker, pacing the cramped quarters with mounting anxiety. From the outside, the facility looks like an ordinary dock owned by Kato Shipping Company. But beneath its weathered planks and rusted cranes lie a web of deadly traps and 24-hour surveillance. Yet against the unstoppable might of the Poison Village, even these defenses feel inadequate. Kato's gaunt face is lit by the glow of his control screens. His eyes flicker with conflicting emotions, yearning for the iron-fisted power he once wielded, and a deep, unshakable fear of the forces gathering against him. He built his empire in this barren land on one simple foundation: absolute command of its shipping lanes. Now, that very strength seems to be slipping through his fingers. Although Wave Country's population barely tops 50,000, nearly every resident depends on imported supplies, making maritime trade the nation's lifeline. Ethan remembered with a bitter smile how years ago he'd used sheer force of will and ruthless business tactics to squeeze out every rival until his shipping company stood alone as the undisputed giant of the waves. He set the price of essential goods, effectively controlled the country's economic pulse, and even persuaded the daimyo to grant him exclusive shipping rights. For a time, he believed his throne at the top of Wave Country was unshakable. Then came the Poison Village. Like a sudden, merciless storm, its mysterious ninjas struck without warning. Their methods were swift and deadly. In a matter of days, they hijacked the routes and contracts Ethan had fought so hard to secure. His underlings, whether mob enforcers or hired swords, fell one by one, eliminated without mercy. Now Ethan crouched in this hidden, candlelit chamber, feeling more like a beaten dog than the king of commerce he'd once been. All his power was gone, and with it went his certainty that he could never be toppled. "I told you to find a stronger ninja to protect me. Did you find one?" Ethan's voice trembled with barely restrained panic. He couldn't stomach the idea of sitting idly by and waiting for fate to decide his future. His subordinates exchanged uneasy glances before one braver soul swallowed hard and stepped forward, offering him a neat stack of bounty sheets. "These are all the leads we could gather," the young man said. "Independent rogues, notorious in the ninja world. Any one of them might." Ethan snatched the papers, his eyes blazing with greed and hope. Though these outlaws were infamous, their power was no legend. If just one could be hired, he might yet turn the tables. He flipped through sheet after sheet, studying each wanted poster with a predator's intensity. Then he froze on one particular warrant. 15 million taels, Kito Zabuza. A cold sneer curled Ethan's lips. Everyone in the ninja world knew the name. Ruthless, merciless. Wielding the massive blade known as the beheading sword, Zabuza had left a trail of terror and severed limbs in his wake. Securing his allegiance would be no small feat, but if Ethan could pull it off, no enemy would stand in his way. Although rumors painted him as eccentric and uncontrollable, Ethan was convinced that any obstacle could be overcome with the right price. A cruel smile curled at his lips as he leaned forward. "Heh, Kito Zabuza, if you'll swear allegiance to me, what's the Poison Ninja Village compared to my ambitions? With you on my side, the entire land of waves will fall right into my hands." A wild gleam flickered in Ethan's eyes as he ran the numbers in his head. No sooner had he made his offer than the infamous Kito Zabuza agreed to his terms. Buoyed by this victory, Ethan felt unstoppable. The revival of Kato Shipping Company under Ethan's leadership was nothing short of voracious. Like a ravenous beast, it opened its bloody maw and sucked every drop of prosperity from the region. Once proud fishermen who rose with the sun to cast their nets now found the seas fraught with danger and uncertainty. Where sparkling waters should have promised a bountiful haul, they instead saw nothing but the iron grip of Kato's monopoly. Vessels that once sailed freely between the land of waves and the land of fire now flew the Kato shipping flag, their captains too wary to raise any other. What had been a thriving coastal economy was reduced to a powerless bystander, forced to watch as Ethan and his company swallowed every opportunity in their path. Ethan crouched on the wind-battered jetty, salt spray stinging his face. Every voyage now came with crippling fees, like shackles around a bird's wings, stripping away any hope of freedom. He stared out at the rolling gray sea and muttered, "How are we supposed to survive under these conditions?" Behind him, a half-dozen other fishermen leaned on their oars, their rough hands calloused by years of hauling nets. One of them, old Marquez, ran a weathered thumb over a frayed rope. "We worked from dawn till dusk," he growled, "and we always brought home enough for our families. Now the price of fish is sinking, and Cardo's raising every cost they can. Each trip leaves us poorer than the last." A tense silence followed, broken only by the slap of waves against the pier. They all knew that in this country, Cardo Company held every string, harbor fees, export permits, even the auctions where they sold their catch. Protesting felt as futile as shouting into a gale. Meanwhile, high above the turmoil, Cardo reclined in the marble-floored living room of his seaside villa. Crystal decanters glinted on polished mahogany tables, and servants moved like shadows at his command. He toyed with the corner of his silk handkerchief, a faint smirk curling his lips. These fishermen and merchants, he thought, were nothing more than ants beneath his boots. Their grievances barely registered in his world of inflated ledgers and boardroom victories. As long as his grip on power and profit remained unchallenged, he couldn't care less about the struggles of those he'd left behind. "I'd be happy to help, but I only see a single line at the moment. Could you please paste the full chapter text that you'd like me to revise? Once I have the entire passage, I'll smooth out the prose, ensure Ethan is consistently male, and deliver a polished version ready for an English-speaking audience." Chapter 925, The Poison Ninja Village Arrives. Cardo was just admiring his triumphantly completed battle plan when an uninvited guest shattered the silence. Across from him sat a bandaged figure, Momochi Zabuza, the notorious rogue ninja from Kirigakure. "Cardo," Zabuza began, his tone as cold and sharp as steel, "your intelligence is off. I've been waiting for days, yet we've seen no sign of the enemy. I want answers." Cardo braced himself at the edge of the desk, fists clenching and a fine sheen of sweat glinting on his forehead under the dim lantern light. He knew all too well that Zabuza's fearsome reputation wasn't an exaggeration. His strength could shake the very foundations of the land of waves. Swallowing his apprehension, Cardo forced a calm smile. "Lord Zabuza," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his heart, "I assure you, the Poison Ninja Village has been active, but they've taken extreme care. They won't reveal themselves until they're certain the time is right. But please don't worry. The moment the Poison Ninja Village shows itself, I, Kaduo, will move at once. No one will escape my nets." Zabuza let out a cold, scornful laugh. "Your assurances mean nothing to me. I don't want promises. I want proof. 7 days. That's your deadline. If I neither see the Poison Village nor receive my payment in that time, you'll pay the price." Kaduo's heart sank at the veiled threat. A traitor with the gall to threaten him? He forced a respectful bow, hiding his fear. "Rest assured, Lord Zabuza, you'll have your commission on time." Without another word, Zabuza rose and vanished through the doorway as silently as a shadow. Left alone, Kaduo stood frozen, his face drained of color and his mind racing. He'd believed hiring Zabuza would both wipe out any threat to the Poison Ninja Village and cow the merchants who resented his shipping monopoly. But with this deadly ultimatum, Kaduo realized he'd walked straight into a trap, and now the walls were closing in. Because the relocation of the Poison Ninja Village had been delayed, everything was thrown into disarray. When Cardo stepped out of his office, he drew in a deep breath of salty sea air, trying to soothe the edge of his temper. He paused at the water's edge and looked around. The once bustling harbor was now almost deserted. Only a handful of ships remained moored to the docks. Fishermen stood in small clusters, muttering curses or heaving frustrated sighs, their faces marked by uncertainty and helplessness. All of this, Cardo reminded himself, was the inevitable fallout from Cardo Shipping Company's monopoly, and the crushing taxes his fleet imposed on every vessel that dared dock here. Am I really going to bow to these traitorous ninjas? He wondered, clenching his jaw. But no matter how he thought it through, there was no way to match Zabuza's strength head-on. And yet the Poison Ninja Village was preparing to strike at him. Their leader, Venomous Fang, a brilliant young ninja from the land of waves, had no wish to see his homeland ruined by Cardo's unchecked power. Fang had even approached Whisker and Alex, pleading with them to take action. But both men had brushed aside his warnings, refusing to believe that Cardo would tolerate any challenge to his dominance. Now Fang was determined to act alone, and that alone made Cardo uneasy. Ethan, like Dazna before him, had reached the same conclusion. The true way to change the Land of Waves' destiny was to build a bridge. A single span of timber and stone, complete with toll booths, would cost money up front, but the tolls paid by merchants would be more than repaid in the flood of trade and prosperity that followed. Already, Wesker, lord of the shipping guild, looked down on sea transport as obsolete. Cardo rose to his feet with a steely calm. Wesker studied him for a moment, suspicion glinting in his cold eyes. Cardo must have hidden allies, he thought. But who in the secretive world of shinobi would dare intervene? The 5 great villages guarded their politics too jealously. In that case, Wesker said, nodding to his lieutenant, Venom Fang. Take care of Cardo. Eliminate him. Thank you, Chief. Venom Fang responded eagerly, bowing once before snapping orders to his men. Within moments, a squad of poison ninjas from the Land of Waves assembled at his side. Their ranks were a tangled web of former Wave Village shinobi, mercenary outcasts from distant provinces, and even ex-retainers of Salamander Hanzo who'd fled the Hidden Rain village. To the outside world, Hanzo's fate was still a mystery. Yu Ren, the defector, had no intention of revealing that the feared warlord was truly dead. There was no official bounty on their heads. If one had existed, the Akatsuki would have slapped a price on them without hesitation. Instead, to keep Hanzo's death under wraps, the organization assembled an unmarked strike team. No warrants, no public records, just a single directive: track down and eliminate every traitorous shinobi. After weeks of dead ends and false leads, the hunters finally arrived at the hidden village of Poison, a settlement feared for its mastery of lethal toxins. At Cardo's fortified encampment, lantern light danced across maps and weapon racks. Zabuza crouched beside a low table piled with gold coins, his voice a deep rumble in the heavy air. "Take your payment and be gone by dawn," he said, each word both promise and threat. Since that botched assassination, he'd lived as a hunted wolf, every breath, every movement shadowed by the hunters on his trail. Sleep came only with the taste of danger, yet this mission had gone almost too smoothly. The chest of coins gleamed temptingly, but Zabuza felt restless. Victory without a fight left him hollow, pain without purpose. Time wasted gnawed at him more than any enemy's blade. At his side, Bai exhaled softly. "Very good," he whispered, 2 simple words brimming with relief and the longing for rest. He carried within them gratitude for a job well done, hope for quieter days ahead, and the unspoken acknowledgement of all the battles they'd survived to reach this moment. Silence settled over the camp once more, as if the world itself were holding its breath, waiting to see what came next. The peace didn't last long. From downstairs came a sudden crash. Bang! Bang! The sharp splintering of glass and terrified screams slicing through the stillness. To most people, it might have sounded like distant chaos, but to Zabuza and Shiro, rebel shinobi who never lowered their guard, it was the unmistakable ring of alarm bells. Zabuza's eyes snapped open. The cold indifference they usually wore melted away, replaced by a predator's focus. He exchanged a single, wordless glance with Bai, and they both understood. In an instant, Shiro's form dissolved into the shadows, moving like a ghost, while Zabuza rose with measured calm, his massive decapitating sword already in hand, ready for whatever threat lurked below. In the banquet hall, revelry gave way to pandemonium. Guests shrieked and scattered in every direction, overturning tables in their desperation to flee. Kato, paling by the second, stumbled toward Zabuza, his voice barely more than a croak. "Quick, we have to get out of here." But before he could finish, Zabuza was already charging into the darkness, blade gleaming and eyes alive with purpose. Shiro followed like a shadow, and behind them trailed Bai, every muscle poised for battle. The night had erupted into violence, and the 3 of them would meet it head-on. The commission wasn't over yet. Someone had clearly come to kill me. My voice shook, and terror flickered in my eyes. "Enough," Zabuza snapped, his tone as cold as the blade he lifted. In an instant, the executioner's sword hovered across Kato's throat, its edge gleaming menacingly in the torchlight. Kato went silent, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. And yet, even at this life-and-death moment, a strange exhilaration coursed through him. By striking on the very last day of the assignment, the Poison Ninja Village had delivered the ultimate provocation, a calculated payback for all the disgrace they'd previously suffered under Zabuza's hand. Chapter 926, Momochi Zabuza's Showcase. More importantly, this meant Kato might avoid paying Zabuza the enormous fee he'd originally promised. He drew in a shaky breath and called out, "All right, I'm counting on you, Lord Zabuza. I trust you completely." Even as he spoke, Kato's voice quavered. He knew that right now, Zabuza was his only hope. Inside the manor, the flickering flames cast long, writhing shadows across cracked stone walls, turning the grand hall into a scene straight out of a nightmare. Dozens of poison ninjas stood poised in the darkness, their silhouettes like demons summoned from the underworld. Every breath they took released clouds of lethal gas, odorless at first but charged with a virulence that could shrivel flesh in seconds. The air grew thick and sickly sweet, a warning that death was coming. "Poison emission. Toxic mist technique," one of the masked assassins snarled. Suddenly, a rolling emerald fog burst from his mouth, spreading across the courtyard like an advancing tide. Wherever the mist settled, plants wilted instantly, and small animals let out agonized cries before collapsing motionless. Kato staggered backward, his heart hammering as the stench of decay filled his lungs. From within the emerald haze, a low, cruel voice emerged, chilling in its certainty. "Kato, your time has run out." With those words, the netherworld's breath closed in around them, and the manor's grand hall became a tomb. Ethan tightened his grip on the poison blade, its edge shimmering with an eerie blue light. This knife, born of toxins fused with chakra, could deliver a single, agonizingly slow death with just one stroke. As the assassin known as Venomous Fang, he'd come not only to fulfill his contract, but to exact justice for the countless innocents Lord Kato had sacrificed to his greed. Within the grand hall of the manor, Kato's men, once brash thugs and ruthless ninjas, now lay incapacitated, as helpless as lambs before slaughter. A choking, virulent gas snaked through the corridors, racking convulsions until their limbs stiffened and they crumpled to the floor. Those brave enough to close in on Ethan found themselves met with his poisoned blade. A single wound, a crimson spray, and life extinguished in an instant. The air grew thick with the scent of iron and despair, the grandeur of the estate lost beneath a pall of death. Beside Ethan stood Zabuza, unmoved by the carnage. Every muscle in his body was poised for action, every heartbeat a reminder that here, one misstep could mean disaster. Channeling chakra into his arms, he prepared to unleash his own devastating technique, ready to ensure their mission and their lives remained intact. Together, they moved through the shadowed halls, two silent predators determined to see justice done. Ninja art, Kirigakure no Jutsu, hidden mist technique. As Zabuza uttered the final syllable, an impenetrable fog bloomed around him, swallowing the world in a thick, featureless white. This mist was more than a mere visual barrier. It was Zabuza's domain, a phantom realm in which he reigned as the very embodiment of death. Within its swirling depths, his form vanished entirely, transforming him into a silent wraith. He moved without a sound, each step melding him further into the vaporous veil. Where the poison ninjas had once counted on keen eyes and swift reactions, they now groped blindly, their senses dulled by the all-encompassing gloom. Unseen, Zabuza drifted toward the nearest adversary, a lone shinobi steeped in deadly toxins. With the ease of someone guiding a hand in the dark, he closed the distance, his every motion calculated to strike without warning. In this self-wrought mist, their poisoned darts and concealed blades amounted to nothing. Zabuza needed only one silent strike to end each life. As the poison ninja slumped to the ground, his mask of confidence shattered. It became painfully clear. In Zabuza's fog, death was the only certainty. They could only rely on their hearing and intuition to detect movement in the fog, and even then, escaping Zabuza's lethal strikes was nearly impossible. The poison ninjas, well aware of the sheer terror he inspired, tightened their formation, hoping that sheer numbers would protect them from the Kirigakure swordsmen. But that dense grouping played right into Zabuza's hands. Shrouded by mist, he slipped effortlessly along their flanks and rear, dispatching any who strayed into his path with his dreaded silent killing technique. This deadly skill, honed through countless life-or-death encounters, delivers a fatal blow with the smallest, most inconspicuous motion, and in the thick haze it was almost impossible to see it coming. One moment there was nothing but mist, the next a glint of steel, and another ninja crumpled to the ground. There was no scream, no cry for help, only the hush of fog closing in around them and the faint, lingering chill of murder in the air. "Damn it! He's a ghost!" One poison ninja shouted in terror, the sound echoing futilely through the shroud of mist, and only deepened their panic. The mist around them trembled as the poisonous ninja squadrons raised their guard, yet even their sharpened senses couldn't withstand Zabuza's relentless assault. Blades flashed, bodies fell, and one shocked voice cut through the chaos. "That's Kirigakure ninjutsu!" Venomous Fang's teeth clenched. He knew that technique all too well. His own village sheltered more defectors from Kirigakure than even the rain did. With a roar that echoed through the swirling fog, he commanded, "Spread out! Execute the poisonous gas jutsu together!" At once, the venomous ninja exhaled, sending ribbons of iridescent gas cascading into the haze. The toxins hissed and curled, glinting in sickly greens, purples, and blacks as they spread. These fumes were triple threats. They corroded armor, paralyzed nerves, and warped sight, deadly to any ordinary shinobi. But to Zabuza, the colored miasma was nothing more than a seasoning on the battlefield. Unshaken, he pressed forward, each step a promise of more death to come. Ethan allowed himself a faint smile as chakra flooded his limbs. In one swift motion, he formed a series of hand seals and called out, "Water release, water dragon bullet technique." From the swirling fog, a colossal serpent of water roared into being. Its sinuous body cut through the mist, surging straight toward the venomous cloud that choked the air. The moment the dragon struck, a violent reaction ripped through the poison gas. Blasts of wind scattered the fumes, but the acidic toxins soon began to erode the water serpent's shape, dissolving it until it vanished entirely. Across the way, Poison Fang's expression twisted in surprise. He had not expected Ethan to dispel their assault so effortlessly. Almost at once, though, the surprise melted into fury, and a cruel light glittered in his eyes. "Very well," he snarled. "Prepare to face true despair." He whipped his head toward the ranks behind him. "Keep our formation tight," he ordered. "Use this fog to our advantage. Make it our battlefield." At his command, the poison ninjas produced dozens of small vials, each secured in leather pouches strapped to their arms. Every bottle contained a different gas, some designed to overwhelm vision, others to paralyze the limbs, and still more to attack the very breath. As they cracked open their flasks, the air grew heavy with latent danger, and the battlefield fell under a sinister hush. Several of the vials held neurotoxins that could paralyze a fighter in an instant, draining every ounce of strength from their limbs. Others contained corrosive acids capable of eating through flesh and bone, and the most insidious brews were those engineered to disrupt chakra flow, robbing a ninja of the very energy needed to cast jutsu. When all the bottles shattered at once, it was as if an invisible rip tore through the battlefield. Ribbons of multicolored gas danced through the pre-existing fog like malicious silk, rapidly merging into a suffocating poison mist that swallowed everything in its path. Chapter 927, Poisoning. In this strange realm, time itself seemed to slow. Every breath felt laden with the weight of mortality, and every exhalation threatened to be the last. A suffocating poison mist clung to the air, burning lungs and numbing senses. Even the most seasoned shinobi would falter here without some form of protection. Standing at the very edge of the toxic haze, Zabuza's dark eyes narrowed. Known far and wide for his merciless nature, he nevertheless allowed himself a flicker of surprise. He had expected a trap, but not one so ingeniously cruel. A slow, humorless smile curved his lips as he raised his hands, already forming new seals for a counterstrike. But before he could unleash his next jutsu, an unfamiliar dread seized him. He craned his neck upward and froze. A roiling black storm composed of countless minute needles hurtled down toward him with terrifying speed and precision. "This is," Zabuza muttered, voice low and tense. He recognized it at once as the Poison Clan's ultimate gambit. Each shard was razor-sharp, and coated in a toxin so lethal that a single prick could end even a warrior's life. As the needle storm closed in, Zabuza's gaze hardened. He would need every ounce of his strength and all his cunning to survive what came next. Ethan's heart pounded as the poisonous mist curled around their position, swallowing the clearing in a sickly haze. If they stayed trapped within this vortex of venom, even a ninja as skilled as Ethan would struggle to find an opening. But before fear could take hold, Zabuza, ever the epitome of deadly composure, stepped forward. Hidden mist technique, mist flash, Zabuza intoned, vanishing in an instant. In his place, a swirl of fog briefly coalesced, then dispersed as he reappeared several meters away, his blade ready. Ethan exhaled, momentarily buoyed by the demonstration of Zabuza's mastery. Yet in that same breath, Zabuza's expression darkened. He began weaving hand seals again, moving with fluid precision. Ninpa water release, great waterfall technique. At his shout, the world seemed to convulse. From the roiling mist above them, an enormous torrent of water thundered down like a collapsing sky. The force of the cascade tore through the poisonous fog, scattering it in every direction. Fine, cleansing droplets hissed as they met the toxic vapors, transforming the deadly cloud into harmless steam. The ninjas who had been advancing through the mist recoiled beneath the waterfall's impact. Some were hurled off their feet, others stumbled backward, coughing and disoriented as the fresh spray clung to their skin. The sudden blast of clean water didn't just clear the air, it completely shifted the battlefield's balance. Ethan seized the moment. As the mist lifted and visibility returned, he dashed forward, his senses sharpened by the clarity Zabuza's jutsu had provided. Together, they would press the advantage before the poison could reclaim its grip. The rushing torrent of water slammed into the poisonous gas with brutal force, instantly creating a billowing cloud of steam. The entire battlefield vanished beneath a choking white shroud, visibility all but gone. Yet for Zabuza, this smothering mist was exactly the opportunity he'd been waiting for. Exploiting his expert command of water escape ninjutsu and his razor-sharp senses, he moved through the chaos like a shark navigating murky depths, silently closing in on Venomous Fang's front lines. "Humph," he muttered, voice dripping with contempt as he slipped behind the cascading wall of water. "A bit of toxic fog? You really think you can trap me with that?" In the next heartbeat, Zabuza's form flickered across the waterfall, reappearing on the far side. His clothes were soaked, but his intimidating presence remained undiminished. Across the steaming haze, the leader of the Venom Ninjas, Venomous Fang himself, scowled in frustration. He longed to strike Zabuza head-on, yet he knew pure poison techniques would never match the legendary water demon's prowess. Still, defeat wasn't an option. He slammed a gauntleted fist against his thigh and shouted, "All units, brace yourselves for the final assault." Ethan waited for the perfect moment. In a heartbeat, he dissolved into motion, appearing like a wraith behind a poison-wielding ninja who was raising a vial to throw. His blade flashed once, and the man crumpled, never even managing a scream. A gust of steel, that was Ethan. He swept through the circle of assassins, each sword strike felling another enemy before they could react. They'd never seen speed like his. Despair etched itself on their faces as they realized they were hopelessly outmatched. Across the clearing, Venomous Fang watched his comrades fall and felt resolve harden within him. If Ethan kept up this onslaught, none of them would survive. He squared his shoulders and called out, "You don't really think you can defeat me so easily, do you?" Ethan only let a cold smile touch his lips. With a sudden lunge, he slashed through the air, and a brilliant arc of steel roared toward Venomous Fang like a bolt of lightning. Fang twisted just in time to avoid the heart, but not without cost. The blade nicked his shoulder, and dark blood bloomed across his tunic. Ethan took another step forward, voice calm and low. "I see now that I overestimated you." Venomous Fang's gasp came sharper than his wound. He was trapped, yet he stood his ground, refusing to back down. Instead of fleeing, Ethan poured the last of his chakra into the poison vial clutched in his hand, steeling himself to die alongside Zabuza. "All right," he snarled. "Let's see whether your blade is quicker or my poison is stronger." With a guttural roar, Ethan flung the glass at Zabuza. But just as it neared its target, Zabuza's form dissolved into a ripple of water, the bottle thudding harmlessly to the ground. Ethan's eyes snapped wide. Water clone technique? He hadn't expected Zabuza to use it so cunningly at the decisive moment. Realizing he'd been tricked, Ethan scanned the swirling mist for the true body, heart pounding. Poisonous vapors hissed around him, and the wind whispered through the ruin. Then a freezing chill crept along his spine. He wheeled around and came face to face with Zabuza's Kubikirabocho, its razor edge pressed mercilessly against the skin at the nape of his neck. Ethan froze, every muscle taut as the icy steel bit into him. His breath caught. The ambush had succeeded. "It's over," Zabuza said softly, his voice as steady as ever. "No," Venom Fang snarled in response. Before Zabuza could strike again, a slender, poisonous serpent slithered out from Venom Fang's sleeve and sank its fangs into Zabuza's wrist. But Zabuza was quicker. He shook his arm, then brought down his large executioner's blade in a single, lightning-fast arc, cleaving the snake in two. The pieces of the corpse spun through the air and landed with a sickening thud, the ground beneath them darkened by toxic ichor. "Don't make me angry," Zabuza growled, his eyes narrowing. He surged forward, swinging his sword at Venom Fang. In a desperate bid to turn the tide, Venom Fang grasped his own poisoned blade with both hands and thrust upward, aiming to trade his life for Zabuza's. But Zabuza only laughed coldly. With a brutal kick to the gut, he sent Venom Fang hurtling backward like a broken kite. Venom Fang crashed to the ground, his insides wrenching in pain. Yet even as agony shot through his body, he struggled to his knees and glared up at Zabuza, refusing to yield. Zabuza's eyes snapped to the shattered vial at his feet, the poison seeping rapidly across the floor. His expression hardened, and he instinctively raised his forearm to cover his mouth and nose. But it was too late. A creeping numbness stole up his legs, racing through his body until every muscle felt locked in place. He fought against it with all his strength, but the toxin's relentless grip only tightened. Chapter 928, Never Kill the Poisonous One Again. Damn, this toxin. Ethan's vision blurred as pain exploded through his limbs. He knew instantly he'd been hit by Poison Fang's dart, and the poison was anything but mild. Every muscle seized up, paralysis crept up from his ankles, making each step feel like he was dragging boulders through mud. He tried to stagger back out of the swirling cloud of venomous mist, but his body wouldn't respond. Poison Fang let out a triumphant laugh, until he saw Ethan's fierce, unbowed glare. Even weakened, Ethan was still dangerous. Once the poison wore off, there'd be no mercy. Panic flickered across Fang's face as he forced himself to pull his poisoned limbs forward, but crawling proved excruciating. "Master Ethan!" Haku appeared in an instant. Ignoring Ethan's protests, he wrapped strong arms around him and hauled him to his feet. "Don't touch me, I'll infect you," Ethan snarled, trying to wrench himself free. "Not a chance," retorted Haku. "Then kill him now." Bai stepped up, eyes blazing. He knew Ethan wanted to end Poison Fang while he was vulnerable. "Absolutely not," Haku snapped back, easing Ethan toward the tree line. "We need an antidote first. Charging into the poison ninja village half-prepared would be suicide, and even with the serum, it'll take time to take effect." Ethan's knees buckled, but Haku held him tight. Through the haze of pain and dizziness, relief washed over him. As long as they could reach help, and fast, there was still a chance to turn the tide. Ethan's heart pounded as he watched the last of the Phantom Mist ninjas vanish into the shadows. The Poison Ninja Village had built its reputation on toxins so lethal they could seal a victim's throat in a gush of blood, but chakra-imbued shinobi usually shrugged off such threats. Ethan never imagined that Zabuza, the infamous missing nin with a 15 million ryo bounty, would turn the tables so ruthlessly and wound both his targets and their attackers. Just as Ethan contemplated pressing his advantage, Zabuza and his companion Shiro melted away. At the same moment, agents of the Poison Ninja Village materialized from the surrounding forest, whisking away their rescued ally, the young prodigy known as Venomous Fang. In seconds, the battlefield emptied, leaving Ethan alone beneath the moonlit canopy. "It's over," he muttered, tension draining from his shoulders. But relief was quickly replaced by dread. Venomous Fang and the other fledglings were hardly the architects of the Poison Village. No, its true founder was rumored to be a Jonin-level shinobi, whose mastery of poisons was whispered to rival even the deadliest alchemists. Ethan pictured that master's traps and toxins threading into his veins, suffocating him from within. He shivered at the thought. And yet, nothing happened. No message arrived, no summons, no army of masked assassins. The night remained still and empty, save for the soft rustle of leaves. Ethan frowned, uneasy. Had the Poison Village simply accepted their loss? Or were they waiting for something? Him? He gathered his weapons and checked his chakra flow. Whatever their intentions, he wasn't about to give them the opening they desired. Tonight had been a clash of shadows and venom. Tomorrow, he would uncover the Poison Village's true designs and ensure that he emerged alive. Ethan's strength had always been legendary, but even he couldn't withstand the poison coursing through his veins. No matter where Shiro took him, every clinic, every healer, there was no cure. This venom was no ordinary toxin. A Genin or Chunin would have succumbed long ago. Only Ethan's iron will and formidable chakra had kept him alive. Now, desperate, Shiro led him through the gates of the Poison Ninja Village, hoping that joining its ranks might grant Ethan access to the secret remedies they guarded. Ethan protested, weakly but insistently. Haku knelt beside him, gently brushing a lock of hair from Ethan's fevered brow. "Master Ethan," he murmured, voice thick with emotion, "you still have so much left to do. You can't give up now." Inside the village, a chill hung in the air. Every breath tasted of latent toxins, and a faint greenish mist drifted along the narrow streets. The wooden buildings were stark and unadorned, their beams stained by the years of secrecy and suffering they'd witnessed. Even the stones beneath their feet seemed to glisten with malevolence. A grim-faced ninja stepped forward, arms folded across his chest. "Welcome to the Poison Ninja Village," he announced. His words echoed off the silent walls, carrying a promise as ominous as the place itself. Shiro braced Ethan upright. They had crossed the point of no return. Now, their only hope lay in the very community whose reputation chilled the spines of all who heard its name. "This is the grave of the weak and the cradle of the strong." Yuren's voice rang out cold and mechanical, utterly devoid of emotion. "If you want to survive here, you must embrace the poison trial and prove your worth." Presiding over the induction was the village leader, Nin, an enigmatic figure said to be the true master behind Poison Ninja Village. Alongside her stood the Ambu captain, both exuding the same formidable aura once attributed to Hanzo Senshoyu. While Nin rarely revealed herself, the Ambu captain's reputation for appearing and vanishing without warning cast a constant shadow of fear across the village. Remarkably, neither of them relied on poison to gain the upper hand in battle. It wasn't until Ethan and the other recruits arrived that they discovered the secret Nin and the Ambu captain shared, a revolutionary Kekkei Genkai known as poison escape. This technique required absolute mastery of poison ninjutsu and the delicate balancing of two chakra natures, water and earth. Only by weaving these elements together with deadly precision could one dodge or dissipate even the most lethal toxins. A rain ninja escorted the newcomers to the ceremony grounds, where a vast, steam-hazed pool dominated the clearing. Here, Ethan realized the real test would begin, and only those who emerged unscathed would earn the right to call themselves Poison Ninja. The water in the pool was a sickly, dark green, and every so often a foul-smelling bubble broke the surface. This was the infamous toxic soaking pool, the trial every newcomer to the village must endure, and the grave of countless ninja lords who underestimated its venom. "Zabuza-sama's been poisoned," Bai blurted out, panic sharpening his tone as he faced the Rain Ninja medic. "Can you purge the toxin?" The Rain Ninja crouched by Zabuza's side and began a rapid assessment. "What kind of poison is this?" Bai explained what he knew, while the medic checked Zabuza's pulse and ran his hands lightly over the warrior's limbs. When the examination was complete, the Rain Ninja's expression darkened. "There are two ways to treat this poison," he said gravely. Zabuza tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper emerged. His body felt numb, as if every nerve had been severed. He couldn't even sense Bai's frantic touch. Helplessness washed over him, a feeling more unbearable than death itself. The Rain Ninja met Zabuza's gaze. "This toxin ranks among the most lethal we've encountered in the village. Even if we succeed in detoxifying you, the damage is permanent. You'll never regain more than half of your former strength." "You're incredible." Ethan stiffened at the praise. There was no way he could accept it. He'd rather die than be indebted. "Is there another option?" Byakuya regarded him coolly. There is. We can use this poison to fuel the ritual. It amplifies the power of the rite, but it's far riskier than a standard ceremony. The venom is unbelievably potent. If it works, though, you'll emerge among the elite of the poison ninjas. A fierce determination sparked in Ethan's eyes. He knew how weak his body had become, and he refused to become Master Bai's burden. Gritting his teeth against a fresh wave of agony, he forced out, "Master Bai, I choose the second method. Even if it kills me, I'll take the chance. Maybe this Maul can save my career, maybe even give me a happy ending." "Ethan-sama." Shiro knelt at his side, grasping his hand. "Master Bai, you don't understand. My sword, my honor, my will, they won't let me fail you." Ethan's reply came in a hoarse whisper, every word wrung from the depths of his soul. "What I want is absolute power and the means to defy fate, not a last gasp at survival." Zabuza's body sank slowly into the pool of poison, and instant agony ripped through him. It was as if he'd been drawn into a maelstrom of fire and ice at once, every nerve ending an inch of skin scorched and frozen by unprecedented torment. Bai stood at the pool's edge, fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, yet he felt nothing. His gaze was fixed on Zabuza, desperate not to miss even the slightest flicker of movement. Chapter 929. The Poison Village of 1,000 Ninjas. Time dragged on. Ethan's body convulsed in the venom's grip, his skin turning a sickly purple as if he might collapse at any moment. But in his eyes burned an unbreakable resolve. Gritting his teeth, he endured the pain. Deep in his mind, a single thought reverberated again and again. "I cannot die. I won't let Bai down. I will survive, on my own strength." Gradually, the darkness of night gave way to a pale dawn. The first gentle rays of sunlight pierced the thick, toxic fog that hung over the barren valley. To Ethan, that soft light was more than the start of another day. It was a promise of rebirth. After what felt like an eternity of agony, the spasms in his body finally subsided. Each breath now felt heavy and precious, a testament to the life still burning within him. When Ethan opened his eyes, the fear and despair that had once filled them were gone. In their place shone a newfound strength and a fierce hope that he might yet overcome the poison and the perils of this forsaken village. Ethan felt a surge of power flooding his veins, an ability born from his desperate escape through the poison mist. It was both terrifying and exhilarating, a strange fusion of curse and gift. He didn't yet realize the virus coursing through him had irreversibly changed his body. To him, it felt like a miracle, a bargain struck to save his life. I've done it," he breathed, voice barely more than a whisper. Off to one side, the Rain Village ninja who had guided him through the trial allowed himself a satisfied smile. He knew all too well the agony Ethan had endured and how narrow the margin between victory and death could be. "Congratulations, Master Ethan," he said respectfully. "You have transcended the limits of ordinary shinobi. You are now officially one of us, of the Poison Ninja Village." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a new crisis unfolded. Beside him, Bai, the young shinobi who had shared every hardship and triumph along Ethan's journey, crumpled to the damp ground. His face was ashen, every breath a shallow gasp. The same poisonous gas Ethan had just overcome now racked Bai's lungs. "Bai!" Ethan dropped to his knees, fear and guilt crashing over him. Bai had stood with him, fought for him, even risked his own life. And now, because of Ethan's experiment, Bai was paying the price. Ethan's heart thundered. He would not let his friend perish in his stead. Summoning every ounce of his newfound strength, he pressed his hand to Bai's chest, preparing to unlock the power that had saved him, whatever the cost. Rainan's voice carried a note of helpless urgency. "I've told you before, the poison gas here is lethal. Even seasoned warriors need special training and breathing wards to survive more than a few minutes." He raised his hand, palms outward. Wisps of emerald haze curled at the edges of the clearing, proof enough of his warning. "But don't lose hope. In Poison Village, we have a detoxification ritual. If he agrees to leave the village and submit to treatment, there's a chance he can recover." Ethan's answer emerged in a low, unwavering whisper. "No, I want to stay with Lord Zabuza." He was pale, his voice thin as smoke, but his grip on Zabuza's sleeve was iron strong, an anchor in this toxic gloom. Zabuza felt his heart twist. He knew all too well the price of ignorance in this cursed place. If Ethan remained, he He'd simply poison himself to death, repeating the same tragic mistake over and over. Zabuza owed it to the boy to make the hard decision. With deliberate calm, Zabuza knelt so his eyes met Ethan's. "Ethan, you cannot stay. Your body, your very bloodstream, is incompatible with these fumes. If you remain, you will perish." He paused, swallowing the ache in his throat. "I need you alive. Go beyond these gates. Gather the intelligence I cannot obtain myself. Be my eyes and ears in the lands beyond." His tone brooked no refusal. It was a command born of fierce love and grim necessity, the only way to truly protect Ethan. For a moment, Ethan's gaze flickered with conflict, duty warring against devotion. Then, inch by reluctant inch, he unclasped his hand from Zabuza's sleeve, his slender jaw set. The decision was made. Zabuza reached out, placing a rough palm on Ethan's shoulder, and guided him toward the gates of Poison Village, where hope and peril waited in equal measure. He understood that Zabuza's choice was driven by concern and even love for him. "I understand, Master Zabuza. Please be careful. I'll wait for you outside until you get back." With the help of the Rain Village ninja, Ethan underwent a full detoxification and was safely escorted out of the Poison Village. Zabuza, meanwhile, formally pledged himself as a Poison Village shinobi and embarked on his new life under their banner. But life as a poison ninja proved far more restrictive than Zabuza had imagined. Although the village's hold on its ninjas was relatively loose, they could come and go at will. The toxins they carried clung to them like a second skin. Regular visits for specialized treatments and toxin-balancing training were mandatory. Skip one, and the poison would overwhelm you. Zabuza found himself chafing against the routine, stifled by the constant cycle of injections, purges, and drills. Still, he reminded himself that this was a price worth paying to survive and, above all, to protect Ethan. True to his nature, Zabuza adapted quickly. He mastered the village's gas-based techniques in record time. Thanks to his unusually high natural tolerance for poison, his fumes proved deadlier than those of any ordinary Poison Village shinobi, so potent, in fact, that even seasoned veterans had to keep their distance. Yet for every ounce of power he gained, Zabuza felt the weight of his new allegiance settling more heavily on his shoulders. Protection and duty, he now knew, came at a cost. Ethan found the poison mist technique to be perfectly suited to his style. He abandoned the old execution sword and took up a more solid blade of the same length, one he'd specially coated with a potent, fast-acting toxin. Although every ninja learns the 3 fundamental body transformation skills, most poison specialists from the Village of Toxins never bother with them. Instead, they focus on their own 3 poison arts: the poison gas method, the poison mist technique, and the venom spitting technique. Ethan had already mastered the poison mist, but he'd never given the basic venom spitting any real thought. It only let him spray venom directly from his mouth. What was the point? Yet as he walked, an idea struck him. If he could combine the spitting technique with his water escape skill, forming a fluid barrier around himself, he might create a toxic water shell to drown an enemy in poison. Of course, the water could dilute the venom's potency, but perhaps with the right formulation, it would only strengthen the attack's lethality. Once he left the village behind, Ethan's first priority was to seek out Bai. He found his old mentor in the training yard, just as dawn's light washed over the walls. "Master Ethan," Bai called out, rushing forward with genuine relief and excitement. It had been months since they'd last met. Ethan allowed himself the barest hint of a smile. "I'm well, Bai." He folded his arms across his chest and waited, already picturing how best to test his new ideas. Ethan had never even seen the Poison Ninja leader or the Anbu captain, so lax was the administration of the Poison Village. At times, he wondered whether a place so disorganized could really thrive. Yet the steady swell of Poison Ninjas told a different story. Here, anyone who could survive an initial dose of their toxins was immediately granted chakra on par with a genin, plus a deadly arsenal of poisons. It was no surprise their military strength had grown so rapidly. One morning, Zabuza emerged from the village gates with a serious look. He found Ethan and Bai nearby. "Listen up," he said quietly. "The Poison Village is about to make its move." Ethan and Bai exchanged glances as Zabuza laid out the plan. The village was preparing to strike the other ninja nations. Over the past months, they'd stockpiled enough equipment to arm 1,000 shinobi, a staggering investment. They didn't use conventional explosive tags, but their poison gas canisters and toxin vials served the same purpose, and were far deadlier. One well-placed blast, Zabuza warned, and unless you're a Kage or a Jonin of the highest caliber, your chances of survival were virtually zero. How is this possible? Bai's voice trembled with disbelief. The poison village is planning to go on the offensive? They've really grown that bold? Zabuza met her gaze, his face etched with concern. You have no idea how deadly they are, he warned. Their toxins make them far more dangerous than any other nation, and don't think their ambitions end with smaller targets. They'll strike wherever it serves them best. For now, though, they're not yet aiming at the 5 great shinobi countries. Chapter 930, The Fall of the River Kingdom. Wesker sat alone in his makeshift command tent, poring over the latest intelligence on the 5 great ninja villages. His agents had uncovered troubling reports of a mysterious outsider named Virgil, someone stirring chaos within the Hidden Leaf village. Yet to Wesker's mind, the Leaf's internal strife was secondary. Far more dangerous were the Jinchuriki, the tailed beast hosts, whose transformations might render them impervious to his signature toxins and engineered viruses. Jonin and Kage-level shinobi, by contrast, lacked such defenses. A properly engineered neurotoxin could fell even the most skilled shinobi in moments. But when a Jinchuriki drew upon its beast form, no guarantee remained that chemical warfare would succeed. With that in mind, Wesker made his first strategic decision. He would bypass every village harboring a tailed beast. Marked among them were the leaf, the sand, the cloud, the mist, the stone, and the hidden water. Those strongholds remained untouchable for now. Instead, he would strike at the weaker nations on the periphery. His team surveyed nearby targets, and at first their eyes fell on the land of waves. But the endless archipelago, comprised of countless tiny isles, proved inhospitable. Sparse farmland, meager resources, and a weak central authority meant little to gain and too much effort to maintain. So Wesker redirected his focus northward toward the River Kingdom. Larger, more fertile, and strategically positioned between the ninja states, it promised both valuable resources and a staging ground for future operations. With the tailed beast nations still out of reach, the fall of the River Kingdom would serve as the critical opening move in Wesker's campaign to reshape the shinobi world. The Kingdom of Waves has always eked out an existence on the margins of the great powers, its people eking out a living from the mountains and the sea. Located directly south of the Kingdom of Fire, it borders only a few minor realms, the Kingdom of Soup and the Kingdom of Water to the east and Fire to the north. With few opportunities beyond fishing, most Waves citizens survive by harvesting what the sea provides. Today, Wesker stood on the deck of his flagship, gazing toward distant shores. He turned to Alex and issued his orders. Gather 1,000 poison ninjas. Your first target is the Kingdom of Rivers. Isolated and enveloped by dense wilderness, Rivers was perfectly suited for concealment. Hidden from prying eyes, it had already become the secret cradle of the Akatsuki. Tucked between the kingdoms of fire and wind, it boasted no official ninja village, only scattered clans living in remote hamlets. That, Wesker concluded, made Rivers the ideal springboard for his conquest. At Wesker's side, Ethan, a quietly determined young man, nodded. He knew that once Rivers fell, the path to the greater kingdoms would be wide open. And so, under the shadow of jagged peaks and rolling forests, the Poison Ninjas prepared to strike the hidden heart of the Akatsuki's domain. The Poison Ninja village had long struggled to thrive. Its remote, resource-scarce homeland left it isolated and underpowered. Yet its thirst for dominance never waned. After years of clandestine preparation, the village struck at dawn, launching a surprise assault on the neighboring Kingdom of Rivers. Their goal, annex the fertile realm and use it as a springboard for even greater conquests. The speed of the attack stunned every sentry. Like wraiths, Poison Village shinobi slipped through mountain passes, crossed the kingdom's winding rivers, skirted its misty lakes, and sailed along its hidden sea routes. At each turn, they exploited the land's natural defenses, seizing fortresses, river crossings, and watchtowers before the kingdom's forces even sounded the alarm. On the battlefield, their mastery of toxins proved overwhelming. Venomous fog rolled in under cover of darkness, choking out lantern light and sending patrols into panic. Hidden among the grass and stones, poison-laced traps claimed scores of unsuspecting soldiers. Within hours, the command posts of the river country's ninja clans lay in ruin, their armies shattered and leaderless. Caught entirely off guard, the Kingdom of Rivers had no choice but to surrender, its once proud defenses dissolved by the deadly precision of Poison Village's art. The Poison Village's chieftain personally traveled to the river country, and drawing on his peerless expertise in toxins and his keen political insight, convinced the daimyo that an alliance would secure the realm's future prosperity. With both sides in full agreement, the Poison Village was formally recognized as the river country's official ninja stronghold, and immediately began receiving unprecedented supplies, manpower, and strategic support. But no one's rise goes unnoticed. The Akatsuki, whose hidden base lies within the river country, had been quietly monitoring every development. As one of the ninja world's most enigmatic and powerful factions, they remain ever vigilant, seeking ways to manipulate the shifting balance of power. Within their ranks, opinions are sharply divided. Some believe the Poison Village's newfound stature poses little threat to the Akatsuki's long-term plans. Others warn that such rapid expansion could destabilize the existing equilibrium and even endanger the Akatsuki itself. Though the Akatsuki have watched the Poison Village's incursion into the river country with growing alarm, their foremost priority remains preserving their own secrecy and security. Deeply irritated by the Poison Village's aggressive expansion, they nevertheless choose to hold back and gather more information rather than act rashly. But now that the Poison Village has firmly entrenched itself in the river country, with the local daimyo even throwing his support behind them, the balance of power has shifted so dramatically that the Akatsuki are beginning to question whether their passive stance can endure. At the same time, Konohagakure in the Fire Country is feeling pressure unlike anything in its recent history. As one of the 5 great ninja villages, Konoha has long prided itself on military might, abundant resources, and a sprawling intelligence network that other villages can scarcely match. Yet the Poison Village's astonishing rise in the river country has triggered genuine alarm at the highest levels of Konoha's leadership. For decades, Konoha's reputation as the ninja world's undisputed leader rested on its ability to anticipate threats, its operatives woven into every major power block, its spies reporting on every stirring in rival territories. Now, however, even those far-flung informants report only fragmentary rumors of the Poison Village's true agenda and capabilities. Whispers abound of secret techniques born of deadly toxins, of an arsenal that could undermine Konoha's advantage both in combat and in covert warfare. Caught between an emboldened Poison Village next door and the ever-watchful eyes of the Akatsuki behind them, Konohagakure's great halls have become the scene of heated strategy sessions. As senior jonin and council members debate alliances and potential countermeasures, the question on everyone's lips is the same. How does the village that once shaped the ninja world respond when the world itself begins to reshape around it? When word of the Poison Village's sudden occupation of the Rain Country reached Konoha, unease settled over the entire village like a thick fog. Inside the Hokage's office, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the 3rd Hokage, revered far and wide as the ninja hero, pressed his fingertips to his temples, his brow tightly furrowed. That operation was executed far too swiftly to be mere opportunism, he said softly. There has to be a deeper motive. His voice, low but urgent, carried to the Ambu operatives standing at attention around him. Double our reconnaissance along the Rain Country border, he ordered, and prepare for every possible contingency. Without another word, Hiruzen rose and summoned Shimura Danzo. The elder shinobi slipped into the room, wearing his customary half-smile that never quite reached his eyes. "You asked for me, Lord Hokage?" Danzo greeted, voice calm yet probing. "I need a clearer picture of the Poison Village," Hiruzen replied. Danzo's lips tightened, and his smile grew thin. "The hidden Poison Village is unlike any other threat we've faced. Their defenses are woven into deadly venom techniques. An infiltration attempt is practically a death sentence. We've dispatched countless spies, very few have returned, and those who did came back broken in body and spirit." Hiruzen exchanged a glance with Danzo's shadowed expression, the room humming with the unspoken knowledge that the quiet before this storm was about to break. Even those few shinobi who managed to infiltrate the village never returned unscathed, Danzo Shimura said in a low, urgent tone. Everywhere they went, they encountered hidden traps that unleashed deadly poison gas. Not even our best detoxification experts have found a way to counteract them. He paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. Then he added, "What's truly alarming is that the daimyo of Kawanokuni has chosen to ally himself with the Poison Ninja Village. There's bound to be a deeper conspiracy at work. We need to learn exactly what the Poison Village intends and how they convince the daimyo to side with them." Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded, recognizing the logic in Danzo's words. A ninja village backed by Kawanokuni would be an entirely different threat than one under the patronage of the Land of Waves. If the Poison Village were to shift its allegiance entirely to Kawanokuni, it could grow unchecked, becoming a festering thorn in the side of the Land of Fire and of Konoha itself. "Is there truly no way to gather more intelligence?" Hiruzen asked, frowning. "Not even a clue as to who leads this Poison Village." "Still don't believe me, Hiruzen?" Danzo Shimura's voice was sharp with frustration. "I'm saying there's someone pulling the strings in the Poison Ninja Village, someone we've never laid eyes on and whose abilities we know nothing about. He's hiding deep in Kawa's territory and leaving no trace. If we can't even identify him, how can we defend against him? We can't risk another threat on the scale of Sancho Hanzo." Hiruzen Sarutobi closed his eyes and released a long, weary sigh. Sancho Hanzo had ultimately failed in his bid to conquer Omegakure, but his legacy still cast a long shadow over the shinobi world. Chapter 931, split into two groups. The Sand Village in the Land of Wind was growing increasingly uneasy. From their vantage point, the sudden rise of the Poison Village threatened to upset the balance of power in the shinobi world. In the Kazakage's office, 4th Kazakage Rosha convened his closest advisors to weigh their options. Rosha leaned forward, his steady voice cutting through the hush. "The Poison Village's ascent is a serious menace to our people. We cannot afford to remain idle. We must take decisive action." "Agreed, Lord Kazakage," his deputy replied. "Yet a head-on assault would be reckless. Their poison techniques are unlike anything we've seen. We'll need a more subtle strategy." Another counselor cleared his throat. "Might we seek an alliance with Konoha? As the powerhouse of the ninja world, the Leaf Village's support would greatly improve our odds. If we can persuade them to join forces against the Poison Village, the threat could be neutralized far more effectively." Rosha's gaze drifted to the map on the wall, contemplating borders and supply lines alike. In these uncertain times, he knew, no village could stand alone against such a formidable adversary. Working together, even with long-standing rivals, might be the only path to victory. Ethan rode hard through the night, the Sand Village's secret letter clenched in his hand. As a trusted jonin, he'd been chosen to deliver the missive personally to Konoha, an alliance proposal born of grave necessity. Rumors of the Poison Village's aggressive expansion had reached even the desert stronghold, and Sand's Kazakage, Luo Sha, believed that joining forces with the Leaf could tip the scales. Before dawn, Ethan slipped behind the Hidden Leaf's fortified gates. He presented the scroll to the guard commander, who verified the Sand Village seal and hurried it to the Hokage's tower. Moments later, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, read the letter aloud to his gathered council. "Honored Hokage," it began, "the Poison Village's growing influence in the river country threatens all of us. We propose a formal alliance. Together, we will root out this malignant force before it can choke the life from our nations." Hiruzen folded the scroll and looked toward his advisors. "I believe the Sand Village's proposal warrants serious consideration," he said. "If the Poison Village takes hold in the river country, it won't stop there. Their poison could spread across the entire shinobi world, upsetting the balance we've fought so hard to maintain." Yamato, representing the Ambu, nodded gravely. "We've intercepted reports of toxin-based jutsu being tested on unarmed farmers. If they grow bolder, the casualties will be catastrophic." Tsunade, the 5th Hokage's granddaughter, added, "Konoha's medical corps is ready to assist with any antidotes, but containment on its own won't be enough." We need to strike at the source. After hours of debate, the Leafs leadership reached consensus. They would accept the Sand Village's offer and launch a joint campaign to expel the Poison Village from the river country once and for all. Hiruzen rose from his seat. Very well, I will dispatch a shinobi delegation, led by my granddaughter Tsunade, Yamato, and our finest strategists, to coordinate with Kazekage Luosha's forces. Ethan's mission will earn him the gratitude of both our villages. Together, we will uproot this threat before it can spread any further. With that, the alliance was forged. As the meeting broke, Ethan exhaled, preparing himself for the trials ahead. The fight to save the river country and the entire shinobi world had begun. However, as the two allies began to prepare for their joint operation, an embarrassing truth stood in the way. The Sand Village simply didn't have enough shinobi. Cut off from the Wind Country's daimyo and deprived of material support, they'd been forced to concentrate on training only the most elite warriors at the cost of sheer numbers. In contrast to Konoha's promised deployment of thousands of ninja, the Sand Village could only muster a little over 100. Still, they refused to despair. On the battlefield, victory doesn't hinge on numbers alone. Tactics, strategy, and flawless teamwork can level the playing field. And when you measure a newly founded settlement like Poison Village against Konoha and the other four great ninja nations, raw manpower means even less. Determined to make every shinobi count, the Sand Village launched an all-out preparation. They handpicked their finest fighters, honed specialized combat techniques, and devised a variety of intricate battle plans. Every jutsu and every squad maneuver was drafted to maximize their impact, so that when the time came, those 100-plus elite ninjas could stand toe-to-toe with an army of thousands. The Allied commanders gathered around the projection table, their faces lit by the glow of the strategic map. As they conferred, Shikaku Nara took a piece of chalk and began sketching the enemy's defenses in meticulous detail. He outlined the Poison Village's likely strong points, thick barricades, concealed sniper nests, and choke points bristling with traps, and then traced the routes by which Konoha and the Sand Village forces could most effectively converge. I propose a two-pronged assault, Shikaku announced. The bulk of our elite units will engage the Poison Village head-on, drawing out their main force. Meanwhile, a smaller strike team will slip around the rear and sever their supply lines, cutting off reinforcements and provisions. And of course, we'll have medical squads on standby with ample antidotes in case the enemy resorts to their signature poison weapons. The Sand Village representatives nodded in agreement. With the renowned Nara clan coordinating the operation, any lingering doubts about success evaporated. Their commanders trusted Shikaku's reputation, and the combined might of Konoha and Suna would be formidable indeed. But before battle plans could solidify, an almost unbelievable announcement crackled over the wireless. The daimyo of the Wind Country had officially recognized the Poison Village and pledged full support for its development. The news hit the alliance like a storm, turning a straightforward campaign into something far more complex and dangerous. The news spread like wildfire through the ninja world, and it threw the newly formed Konoha Sand Village alliance into utter chaos. Sand Village shinobi were stunned, their outrage palpable. They had always sworn loyalty to the daimyo of the Land of Wind, yet at the most critical moment he had thrown his full weight behind the Poison Village. Such a betrayal not only threatened the Sand Village's hard-won reputation among the great ninja nations, it also struck a devastating blow to their morale. When Chunin Commander Luosha received word of the daimyo's decree, fury and despair warred in his heart. He knew this edict did more than abandon their village, it risked dragging them into an unprecedented crisis. Without hesitation, he summoned the elders and senior counselors to the war chamber. "We cannot sit here and wait for death," Luosha's voice boomed. "Yes, the daimyo has forsaken us, but we still have our honor. We will not let the Sand Village fall without a fight. We must show the entire shinobi world that the Sand Village is irreplaceable." In a tense emergency meeting, Tsunagakure's council resolved to neutralize the Poison Village before it could anchor itself in the Land of Wind. No one dared oppose the plan, not even seasoned strategists like Chiyo and Ebizo, who quietly exchanged worried glances. If the Wind Country's daimyo went ahead and revoked the Sand Village's privileges, refusing to act would be tantamount to signing their own village's death warrant. Far to the west, in Konohagakure, the response was calm but resolute. Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi immediately convened his senior advisors to analyze the new threat and devise a fresh strategy. Hiruzen suspected that the Poison Village's sudden rise masked far more complex political and economic entanglements, and that the daimyo's decision, MIG-HT, simply be one move in a much larger game for power. To protect Konoha's interests, he ordered increased investment in intelligence, alliances, and military readiness. With both great villages now mobilizing, the stage was set for a struggle that would determine not only territorial lines, but the balance of influence across the entire shinobi world. Wesker not only boosted the number of ninjas dispatched to the River Kingdom, but also sent an elite strike team into the Wind Kingdom, intent on uncovering the true force behind Poison Village and exposing the Wind Daimyo's hidden ambitions. Although his forces were stretched thin, he had a cunning solution in mind. Genin-level operatives might be more than a match for ordinary opponents, but they were hardly invincible. No one in Wesker's command believed a Genin stood a chance against a Licker, much less a Tracker, a Tyrant, or Alex's personal hunter. His answer was to deploy biochemical weapons as the front line, with ninjas following close behind to coordinate attacks and issue orders. Back in the Wave Kingdom's Poison Village, only a few poison ninjas remained. Wesker divided them into two detachments, one to reinforce the Poison Village in the River Kingdom, the other to infiltrate the Wind Kingdom. Of course, none of this would have been possible if the Wind Daimyo hadn't already fallen under Wesker's control. Otherwise, he would never have agreed to elevate Poison Village as the Wind Kingdom's ninja stronghold, or to displace the Sand Village entirely. "We're being watched," Wesker murmured, his eyes narrowing as he stared into the distance. He could feel the faint pulse of chakra and the unmistakable signature of another human out there. Chapter 932, Spiritual Beast, Licker. A hot wind swept across the dunes as Sand Village Jonin Maki and Yura led their squad in silent pursuit of the Poison Village shinobi. Yura's head was wrapped in white cloth that covered both cheeks, a lock of hair fell over his right eye, and a neat goatee framed his chin. He paused atop a low ridge and peered through the haze. "There," he said softly. "Those must be the Poison Village operatives." Behind him, a subordinate mirrored his head wrap and wore the Sand Village forehead protector over a fitted black combat suit with a khaki-green Chunin chainmail vest strapped on top. "Intel confirms it," he replied. "Their forehead guards bear the skull emblem. That's Poison Village." Maki, standing a pace ahead, nodded. His own white scarf was draped across his left cheek, 2 red marks streaked across the right side of his face, and he too wore black combat attire beneath a Jonin-grade chainmail coat. Maki's reputation spoke volumes. As the former mentor to Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro, he was a force few dared to challenge. He had slain Konoha's special ninja Gekko Hayate with a single blow, and once stood shoulder to shoulder with Kabuto against Kakashi, Gai, and Shiranui Genma. Underestimating him would be a grave mistake. Maki raised a gloved hand and motioned for his team to halt. "Keep your senses sharp," he whispered. "We move on my signal." Ethan stood in the Sand Village's war chamber, the weight of the Kazakage's trust pressing on his shoulders. As the village's most indispensable general, he'd proved himself in every campaign, and now his focus was squarely on the upstart Poison Village. Though the daimyo of the Wind Country had officially recognized Poison Village as a legitimate ninja settlement, Ethan and the Sand Ninja Command had no intention of sharing the title. "There can be only one true ninja village in the Wind Country," Ethan reminded his officers. Their plan was simple: intercept every unit the Poison Village sent, eliminate them, and leave the daimyo no choice but to revoke his decree. A single decisive victory would reassert the Sand Village's supremacy. But there was a complication. Poison Village specialized in deadly toxins, so insidious that even a scratch could prove fatal. To counter this, the retired Chiyo had secretly produced vats of bespoke antidotes, each tailored to neutralize the enemy's signature poisons. Those antidotes lay ready in hidden caches throughout the desert, a silent guarantee that the Sand Ninja would never be caught off guard. Just then, a scout burst into the chamber, breathless. "General!" Enemy units approaching from the east, led by Wesker himself. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Wesker was Poison Village's covert operations chief, a master of disguise and subterfuge. He'd heard rumors that Wesker had infiltrated their lines under the alias Way, rallying his own forces for a surprise strike. Night had fallen when Wesker, cloaked in shadows, addressed his assembled poison ninjas. His lips curved into a faint smile. "Release the liquors." A ripple of excitement passed through the ranks. "Yes, Lord Y," they replied in unison, bowing low. None suspected that Way was the same ruthless leader who'd orchestrated countless assassinations. A second lieutenant, known only as Key, stood by Wesker's side, reinforcing the illusion. Beyond the dunes, the desert wind carried the distant roars of the lickers, bioengineered beasts bred by Poison Village to spread terror and toxins in equal measure. Ahead lay a confrontation that would determine once and for all which village the Wind Country's daimyo would pledge his allegiance to. The Sand Village under Ethan's command, or the insidious Poison Village led by Wesker's hidden hand. Ethan stood at the head of his forces, flanked by Way and Key, his two most trusted lieutenants, and the Poison Village's senior ninja operatives. Whereas most shinobi relied on the standard transformation jutsu, Ethan had mastered a far more insidious technique, viral metamorphosis. On a cellular level, he rewrote his own body, leaving behind a perfect disguise that even practitioners with the coveted white-eye technique couldn't detect. Tonight, the Poison Village prepared to unleash its deadliest assets. Over the past years, they had forged soul contracts with creatures known as lickers, raising these abominations as their personal summoned beasts. At Ethan's signal, the ninjas began forming seals in rapid succession. The air around them quivered, as if reality itself were being stretched. With a series of grotesque cracks, tears appeared in the space surrounding them. From each rip emerged a licker, its flesh slick with mucus, its body bristling with spikes. The beasts hurled themselves forward with chilling roars, eyes gleaming with bloodlust. As both summoned allies and elite shock troops, they instantly shifted the tide of battle in favor of the Poison Village. Across the field, Monkey and Yura of the Sand Village watched the nightmarish creatures assemble. Their expressions flickered with concern, but they held their stances. "These lickers are going to be a nightmare to handle," Maki whispered, tightening her grip on her sand-filled gourd. The battlefield fell into a tense hush, enemy and ally alike bracing for the onslaught to come. They must be the Poison Village's ace in the hole. "Stay alert. Those things secrete deadly toxin." Thanks to their years as Jonin, Maki and the others forced down panic and forced their minds clear. Swiftly, Maki redrew the formation on the windswept plain and barked instructions at Reizo. "You and your Chunin squad will contain these summoned beasts. Don't engage them head-on. Your job is to stall." "Yes, Lord Maki." Reizo saluted crisply and marshaled his team. Kunai in hand, talisman scrolls at the ready, they advanced toward the snarling lickers with taut, cautious steps. Moving as a unit, they worked to corral the creatures and shrink their field of attack. Every footfall tightened the tension in the air until an almost mournful hush settled over the battlefield. The Sand Village ninjas braced behind raised weapons. Some gripped kunai so hard their knuckles went white, preparing for the carnage to come. On the other flank, the Poison Village's operatives edged forward under the licker's lethal protection, their eyes alight with both a burning hunger for victory and a raw terror of the unknown. They were up against one of the 5 great shinobi villages. Even the weakest of those 5, the Sand Village, wasn't someone they could take lightly. Yet here they were, preparing to clash. Those lickers looked terrifying, but Sand Shinobi had faced deadly foes before. "Deploy all puppet units," Maki ordered, her voice calm but firm. "Focus on eliminating the summoned beasts first. No chance of poison getting a foothold." At her command, the Sand Village battlefield snapped into a web of tense precision. The Puppet Corps, pride of the village's arsenal, glided to their stations along the perimeter like silent sentinels. Each one was a marvel of craftsmanship, an almost indestructible shell, bristling with concealed weapons and intricate mechanisms engineered to handle the most unpredictable threats. A soft click echoed across the field as the puppets sprang into motion. In elegant, almost choreographed movements, they unfurled a vast, interlocking net. Metal joints hummed as wires drew taut, forming a shimmering lattice that spread outward like a mechanical spider's web. Not a single twitch went unnoticed. The puppets worked in perfect unison, ready to ensnare any summoned creature that dared breach their lines. Some of the Sand Village's puppeteers sent their constructs charging at the lickers, using reinforced bodies bristling with poison-tipped spikes to draw and withstand the enemy's assaults. Others slipped around the flanks, extending nearly invisible chakra threads to guide precise, long-range strikes. The lickers, however, quickly adapted. They abandoned their headlong rushes for coordinated tactics. One would grapple a puppet in close quarters, while another darted around to sever the fragile chakra lines leading back to its unseen master. Faced with such teamwork, the Sand Village operators had to calculate each move with utmost care, wary of walking into a trap. Meanwhile, the Chunin squad under Lisa's command launched a swift, flanking assault of their own. They knew a direct confrontation with the lickers would be disastrous, so they relied on speed, surprise, and tightly synchronized attacks to keep the monsters off balance. Ethan's squad shifted into tighter formations, using the ruined outcroppings and narrow defiles to their advantage. Coordinating their kunai strikes with bursts of ninjutsu, they harassed the lickers at every turn, forcing the creatures to split their attention and bleed their strength. Occasionally, a Chunin would break ranks and charge in, blades flashing in a desperate bid for glory, but most of them hung back, conserving energy and buying time until a true counterattack presented itself. All around them, dust swirled beneath pounding feet, mingling with the snarls of the lickers and the shouted orders of the shinobi. It was a battlefield alive with chaos. Everywhere, steel sang and chakra flared in an unceasing contest of wills. High above, on a rocky ledge that overlooked the fray, veteran Jonin Maki and Yura remained as cool and alert as stone sentinels. Their eyes never wavered from the ebb and flow of combat. Every shift in the enemy's formation, every falter in their own lines, was noted in an instant. When the time came, they would signal Ethan and the rest of the village's reserves when to strike back with everything they had. Until then, their mission was simple: stall the lickers, survive their onslaught, and keep the hope of victory alive. Chapter 933, A Great Victory. Maki crouched behind the shattered remains of her puppet battalion, surveying the carnage. Dozens of wooden soldiers lay in splinters around her, their wires severed and limbs scattered like fallen branches. The lickers, those nightmarish constructs of flesh and toxin, had torn through her defenses with brutal efficiency. "Those summoned beasts are incredible," Yura said, voice tight with urgency. He knelt beside Maki, brushing dust from his shinobi garb. "Good thing we had our puppets, but Poison Village never leaves anything to chance. There's bound to be a backup plan. We can't afford to underestimate them." Before either of them could respond, Ethan stepped forward, his cloak whipping in the rising wind. A determined glint shone in his eyes. "Wind style, great breakthrough," he called. Instantly, a roaring gust burst from his palms, shredding the air into razor-sharp currents and erecting a swirling barrier between the trio and the advancing lickers. Ethan didn't stop there. He followed with a rapid succession of wind-style techniques, each more devastating than the last. "Wind style, gale slash," he shouted, launching slicing air blades that cut through the battlefield. Then he unleashed wind style, tornado tempest, a spiraling vortex that engulfed the undead beasts in its maelstrom. Bodies were ripped apart, bits of flesh and sinew scattering like confetti in the storm. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Maki exhaled, certain the lickers had been obliterated, but her relief was cut short when she saw the torn corpses begin to twitch. Limbs knit themselves back together, wounds sealed over with unnatural speed. Flesh and wire reformed as the lickers staggered to their feet, as whole and feral as before. "They're regenerating," Yura whispered, horror in his voice. Maki's jaw clenched. "This isn't standard summons," she muttered. "Poison Village has something far more sinister hidden up their sleeve." She straightened, readying herself for the next onslaught. Ethan stood beside her, wind still crackling around his fists. "Then we'll face it head-on," he said, voice steady. "Together." Darkness and magic churned on the dusty plain, but with renewed resolve, The three shinobi prepared to turn what looked like a catastrophe into their greatest victory yet. A tremor ran through every Sand Village shinobi on the field. In a heartbeat, they realized just how nightmarish their foes had become, hellish abominations that should not even exist in this world. How are they still standing? A young sand ninja gasped, his voice tinged with horror and despair. These creatures weren't natural. They were lickers, bioweapons born of twisted viral research, and in this chakra-infused world, they'd become virtually immortal. Their regenerative powers had skyrocketed, and after devouring our comrades, they'd absorbed fresh DNA and chakra. Now they'd advanced into Type 2 lickers, bigger, stronger, and frighteningly fast. From the backline, Yura's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Maki, it looks like we'll have to handle this personally." Maki's eyes narrowed. He drew a slow breath, then nodded. "All right, it's time we show the true might of the Sand Village." With that, he coiled his body and sprang forward, as lithe and precise as a hunting cheetah. As he streaked through the air, his hands formed the familiar seals in an instant. "Wind style, wind cut," he roared. Invisible currents snapped into existence at his fingertips, each a razor-sharp blade of air. They sliced through the swirling dust toward the vital point of the nearest Type 2 licker, and in that single, crackling moment, the battlefield fell deathly silent. However, the creature seemed to anticipate the strike. With uncanny agility, it slipped aside and gaped its blood-stained maw, aiming to swallow Maki whole. Unfazed, Maki, one of the Sand Village's few jonin, renowned for his battle prowess, raised his hand and called out, "Wind release, wind blade." Focusing chakra into the tips of his 3 fingers, he formed an Trathan disc of whirling air about 20 centimeters across. He launched it in a near-invisible arc through the raging storm, and the wind blade cleaved into the massive torso of the Type 2 licker. In a heartbeat, the beast's hulking form split in two, inky black blood spraying out and mingling with the whirlwind in an apocalyptic tableau. Yet Maki did not lower his guard. He had seen this monster revive once before. Even as the shattered halves lay limp for an instant, they began to stir. Fresh tissue granulated over the ragged wounds, knitting them closed with alarming speed, and the licker's hideous life flared anew. "Wind style, vacuum wave," Ethan whispered the incantation, his fingers dancing through swift hand seals. Instantly, the air around him convulsed, drawn into a tightening spiral by the force of his chakra. With a sharp exhalation, he unleashed a volley of spinning wind blades, each a razor-edged cyclone shrieking toward the Type 2 lickers that encircled him. The blades struck with blistering speed and uncanny precision, slicing through flesh and sinew as they sought out joints and vital points. In moments, several lickers were torn apart, their bodies shredded by the invisible storm. Yet Ethan didn't pause to celebrate. He needed to discover their weakness. As the battle raged on, he observed that any licker struck hard enough to disrupt its chakra flow slowed noticeably in its resurrection, and a few even collapsed entirely, drained of regenerative energy. This revelation sent a surge of hope through the sand ninjas. Every creature, no matter how formidable, has its limits. Chapter 7, Striking from the Shadows. The lickers appeared unstoppable, sleek, lethal, untiring. In truth, as long as they couldn't pause to recover, their energy reserves would eventually run dry, and they could be worn down to death. But the battlefield wasn't populated by lickers alone. Poison ninjas prowled the dunes as well, specialists in chakra-infused toxins. Unfortunately for them, the sand ninjas' wind-style jutsu effortlessly dispersed these chakra poisons, forcing their poisoned assassins into direct hand-to-hand combat. In close quarters, their venomous arts proved far less devastating. Albert Wesker, overseeing the operation, had deliberately chosen not to deploy his 2 other biological weapons, the Tracker and the Tyrant. Even if he'd enhanced them with chakra, they remained large, lumbering targets when faced against nimble shinobi. Modern firearms might prove superior against conventional enemies, but well-trained ninjas possessed jutsu capable of outmatching ordinary weapons. Lickers, by contrast, were a different breed entirely, small, supremely agile, and frighteningly intelligent. Unaugmented, a licker could dodge a bullet traveling faster than sound, tracking the trajectory from a muzzle flash alone. Now, bolstered with chakra, these creatures were more than a match for genin and even some chunin. Wesker smiled at the thought. This only confirmed what he'd suspected all along. Lickers were the ideal assassins, deadly, silent, and impossible to catch off guard. As long as they prowled the shadows without pause, no fortress wall or wind jutsu could save its inhabitants. If they go all in on a large-scale assault, they'll be completely overwhelmed by ninjutsu, Ethan noted in his log, eyes narrowing at the scene before him. The casualties among the sand ninjas were catastrophic. Ethan had unleashed hundreds of poison ninjas, and when the Lickers threw themselves into the fray, Suna's forces simply couldn't hold their ground. Sunagakure's casualties soared beyond what the village elders could tolerate, forcing a hasty retreat. Without the puppet corps, they might have faced total annihilation, and even with those mechanical soldiers, the battle had pushed them to their very limits. Crafting each puppet required painstaking effort, but to Ethan, the Lickers were disposable bioweapons, so cheap and effective it seemed almost unfair. Thus far, the return on investment had been spectacular. Sunagakure's row, up by the poison ninja army, spread like wildfire through the ninja world. Allied villages, already wary of Suna's declining power, now openly derided them for slipping deeper into disarray. Meanwhile, the poison ninja village, riding the tide of its triumph, reveled in a hard-won victory that left its rivals both shocked and fearful of what might come next. Ethan wondered if this would achieve what Sanshoyu Hanzo never could, overturn the very foundations of the ninja world. Yet in this battle, not one of Sunagakure's three champions, Kazekage Rasa, Chiyo, or Ebizo, had intervened. Chapter 934, Mending the Plank Road by Day, Secretly Marching Through Chenkang by Night. Ethan's unexpected resounding victory over the poison ninja village sent shockwaves through the entire shinobi world. Rumors and uncertainty spread like wildfire. The Wind Country, long a dominant power and a staunch ally of Sunagakure, suddenly found itself in uncharted territory. In his war room, the fifth Kazekage, Rasa, the famed Golden Shield, gazed gravely at his maps, every line and contour now tinged with the threat of a resurgent enemy. He understood all too well that sheer force alone would never eradicate the poison ninja village's menace. Their toxic arts were unpredictable and deadly. To underestimate them would be to invite calamity. Determined to stay one step ahead, Rasa devised a twofold strategy. First, he reinforced Sunagakure's defenses and expanded its intelligence network, ensuring that every movement of the poison ninja village would be observed and reported. Second, he turned to the village's foremost experts, Chiyo and her grandson Ibiza, to spearhead an in-depth investigation into the enemy's poisonous techniques. Only by combining vigilant surveillance with scientific expertise could Sunagakure hope to dismantle this insidious threat once and for all. Ethan stared at the data screens, his jaw set. If they could dismantle the poison ninja village's deadly toxins at their source, they could erase the greatest threat it posed. After all, poison was their signature weapon. Can wind-release ninjutsu really block those toxins? He wondered. Beside him, Luosha studied a newly recovered scroll. His eyes lit up. According to this text, the legendary wind escape technique created an invisible barrier that no poisonous jutsu could breach. Until now, they'd assumed these venomous arts were a specialized offshoot of a secret clan, much like the Nara's shadow techniques, but here it was clear they were unique to Poison Ninja Village. The only exception was the fabled Poison Escape, a countermeasure known to belong exclusively to the village's leader. Far from Ethan and Luosha's research tents, Sunagakure's revered elders, Granny Chiyo and Ibizo, were already in motion. Both were among the oldest and most powerful shinobi in the village, and each embodied a different facet of Suna's strength. Granny Chiyo's reputation for medical mastery and poison expertise was unmatched, while Ebizo's talent for strategy and battlefield layout had saved the village more than once. Under their direction, Suna's recovery squads swept the battlefield. Every fallen ninja's body was retrieved, except for those gruesomely consumed by the lickers, and carried back to camp. In the world of shinobi, even a corpse could yield crucial secrets: residue of newly invented toxins, traces of chakra, hidden seals, or scroll fragments. With each body examined, Ethan and the elders drew closer to unraveling Poison Village's darkest mysteries, and to stripping away its most potent weapon for good. Ethan stood beside the empty storage alcove and shook his head. "It's a shame we can't get our hands on a poison ninja corpse," he muttered. The moment they lose control of their own toxins, the bodies trigger a built-in self-destruct mechanism. By the time anyone finds the remains, there's nothing left to study. Granny Chio's eyes sparkled in the dim light of the laboratory. Even if that mechanism ever failed, she pointed out, their blood and tissues are so saturated with venom that handling them would be nearly impossible without triggering a fatal exposure. She turned to the line of recovered sand ninja bodies laid out on steel tables. Thankfully, these corpses still bear the scars and residual toxins we need. From those marks, we can piece together the Poison Village's combat capabilities, and more importantly, the secrets of their deadly poison techniques. Rolling up her sleeves, Chio plucked a slender, silver-tipped probe from the workbench. Under her steady hand, the needle pierced the skin of a ninja's forearm. Ethan leaned in, watching as she extracted a single, glistening droplet of toxin. The vile substance shimmered in the lamplight, some samples a bright emerald green, others a bruised violet black, each one potent enough to fell a man at a single touch. As Chio carefully transferred the drops into tiny vials, Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation. At last they might unravel the mysteries of the Poison Ninja Village and arm the sand with the countermeasures they so desperately needed. Granny Chio understood all too well that the toxins used by the Poison Ninja Village were more than just weapons. They were the very hallmark of their identity. Unraveling their secrets would be the key to bringing the village to its knees. After days of sleepless research, she finally made a vital breakthrough. These toxins weren't products of nature, but carefully cultivated and enhanced through human ingenuity. In other words, the Poison Ninja Village had built a full-scale research and development operation, backed by scientific prowess not to be underestimated. Most common poisons are simply natural toxins, like the deadly Sanshoyu concoction perfected by Hanzo, which wreaked havoc the world over. Once you analyze a naturally occurring toxin, you can devise an antidote or a neutralizing agent. But with the Poison Ninja Village's custom-engineered venoms, no such shortcut existed. Chio realized, with a heavy heart, that dismantling their chemical arsenal would be far more difficult than she had ever anticipated. Even more alarming was the discovery that these toxins weren't simply a collection of poisons, but part of an exquisitely balanced symbiotic network. Once one toxin was activated, it set off a chain reaction that drove the overall lethality to levels nobody had dared imagine. Confronted with such a complex biochemical system, Granny Chio and Ibizo agreed on a two-pronged approach. 1. Deepen their research to understand every facet of the toxins and accelerate development of targeted antidotes. 2. Strengthen Tsunagakure's defenses and intelligence operations to thwart any future assault by the Poison Ninja Village. Meanwhile, the enemy was already plotting its next move. Wesker had identified a remote stretch of the Wind Kingdom's borderlands, an area so rugged and unforgiving that it would be all but impenetrable to attackers. Though the soil was barren, that hardly mattered. This isolation made it an ideal site for the Poison Ninja Village's new headquarters. Here, they could train fresh recruits in secret, refine their deadliest venom techniques, and stockpile strategic resources, all without interference. With both sides racing to consolidate their advantages, the shadow war between Tsunagakure and the Poison Ninja Village was far from over. Each new discovery, each defensive upgrade would tip the balance and could determine the fate of the entire shinobi world. At Wesker's command, the great houses of the Wind Kingdom poured unprecedented support into the Poison Ninja Village. The daimyo himself understood that this village's rise was crucial to the kingdom's security and stability. He therefore granted extensive tracts of land and generous supplies, and personally oversaw the recruitment of promising young shinobi willing to serve the Poison Ninja Village. Among those who came forward were orphans born in poverty, desperate to escape their circumstances after being turned away by kinder-hearted masters who nevertheless scorned their lowly origins. Others were disillusioned ninja chafing under Tsunagakure's rigid rule, while still more were drawn by the growing reputation and mystique of the Poison Ninja Village. Driven by their own dreams and ambitions, they rallied beneath its banner. After all, no shinobi community can flourish without a steady infusion of fresh talent. The arrival of fresh recruits injected new energy into the Poison Ninja Village, sparking rapid growth in a remarkably short span of time. Yet Wesker never lost sight of the bigger picture. He knew that, while the Wind Country outpost was strategically valuable, the true heart of their were lay back in River Country. There, hidden from prying eyes, stood the secret base he had painstakingly prepared, a cornerstone of his grand design. His masterstroke was simple, yet brilliant. Publicly restore the old plank road to draw the sand villages, and by extension, the entire ninja world of Wind Country's attention, all while quietly amassing strength at his River Country stronghold. Now, the Wind Country branch of the Poison Village had already driven off the Sand Village's forces, despite their rivals not even committing their full power, earning a reputation that echoed through every hidden corner of the ninja world. Disaffected shinobi and wayward wanderers, sensing opportunity, flocked to his banner, swelling the village's ranks far beyond its humble beginnings. Ethan stood on the ridge overlooking what remained of Poison Village, recalling its humble beginnings. Once, it hadn't been more than an obscure outpost, an unremarkable ninja settlement that few in the wider world even noticed. In those early days, the village's only strength came from a handful of wandering shinobi contracted from neighboring nations. Their skill lent a modicum of credibility to its defenses, but never elevated it beyond mediocrity. Today, however, all of that was about to change. Albert Wesker, infamous bioengineer and shadowy power broker, had set his sights on these fighters. His next move, a series of clandestine experiments designed to graft the properties of the T-virus and G-virus onto Poison Village's ninjas. If successful, Wesker promised, they would become living weapons, far more dangerous than any blade or jutsu. And as Ethan watched the sun dip below the jagged tree line, he knew he was about to step into the eye of a storm that could reshape the very nature of shinobi warfare. Chapter 935, Virus Adaptation Experiment. Albert Wesker had fused the T-virus, G-virus, Veronica virus, and Las Plagas parasites to forge a new bioweapon, the Ouroboros virus. After entering the creator's domain, he absorbed the strength of every known Resident Evil pathogen. Even so, he never imagined what would happen when the T-virus was unleashed on the world of ninjas. To Wesker's astonishment, the ninjas displayed an uncanny compatibility with the infection. Instead of grotesque mutations, their bodies seemed tailor-made for the virus. Their endurance, speed, raw strength, and even their chakra refinement abilities surged to entirely new levels. "It's extraordinary," Wesker murmured from the observation chamber. Through the one-way glass, he watched his subjects as they underwent relentless training drills. Every punch, every leap, every defensive stance testified to the T-virus's power. In their eyes blazed an unprecedented fervor, the pure ecstasy of limitless potential. Ethan sat in the candlelit briefing chamber of the Poison Ninja Village, listening intently as the village's chief bio-researcher recounted the origins of the so-called tyrant virus. According to her report, James Marcus, one of the 3 founding scientists of Umbrella Corporation, had taken the progenitor virus, grafted in fragments of leech DNA, then painstakingly isolated a brand new pathogen. He christened it the tyrant virus, or T-virus for short. On paper, the T-virus was nothing less than a masterpiece of genetic engineering. It rewrote and amplified biological traits at the molecular level, intended both as a devastating bioweapon and, in theory, a radical method for enhancing human genes. In practice, however, almost every creature exposed to it mutated into a savage monstrosity. Humans fared only marginally better. Statistically, 1 person in tens of millions might endure the infection without losing their mind or form. That is, every ninja in this hidden realm turned out to be that one exception. When the village's shinobi first allowed a controlled dose of T-virus into their systems, the results exceeded even their wildest hopes. Speed, strength, reflexes, every facet of their physical prowess surged. Best of all, they retained full control over their minds and chakra. Thrilled by the jump in power, Ethan and his comrades immediately set about integrating the virus's effects into their ninjutsu, crafting new techniques more potent than anything they'd ever known. As Ethan left the lab, he could hardly contain his excitement. Aligning with the Poison Ninja Village had proven to be the smartest move of his life. What other hidden village could rival this kind of evolutionary leap? None, he thought, not even on the grandest scroll of predictions. Ethan and the other ninja recruits had no way of knowing whether Wesker was simply running routine trials on them or launching full-scale human experiments that bypassed the usual animal tests. But for warriors who chased ultimate power, uncertainty was a small price to pay on the path to greater strength. When the initial data came in, the verdict was unmistakable. Physical endurance has increased. Chakra output has risen substantially. In every measurable way, our combat capabilities have been enhanced. Wesker stared at the 100% success rate with growing astonishment. Buoyed by these results, he decided to test the T-virus on a civilian population to see if its effects held outside the ninja world. The outcome couldn't have been more different. Ordinary people buckled under the virus's mutagenic onslaught, one after another devolving into feral, mindless zombies. This wasn't because the inhabitants of this world possessed some bizarre physiology. It was simply that, among trained ninjas like Ethan, the T-virus's lethal potential had been dramatically blunted. To them, even a zombie's bite acted like a power boost. Frustrated by the civilian failures, Wesker abandoned further T-virus trials and turned his attention to the G-virus, infamously nicknamed the Big Eye virus. As he prepared the new protocol, Ethan sensed that the experiments were about to become far more unpredictable and far more dangerous. William Birkin, Professor Marcus's most promising student, possessed a truly extraordinary gift for biology. In one of his landmark experiments, he injected a female test subject, Lisa Treva, with the Nemesis virus. To his astonishment, this procedure gave birth to the original G-virus. For William, it felt as though he had been handed a divine boon. He watched in awe as the G-virus ravaged Lisa's body, driving her cells through breathtakingly rapid transformations. Ordinary cells subdivided and recombined, spawning bizarre new forms that had never before existed. In mere hours, it was as if millions of years of natural evolution had been compressed into an instant. William was profoundly shaken by what he saw. He grew convinced that the G-virus held the key to surpassing humanity's natural limits. If harnessed properly, he believed, it could elevate mankind into a new race of god-humans, beings of uncanny power, boundless intellect, and dramatically extended lifespans. Such a breakthrough, he dreamed, would reshape civilization itself. Of course, the G-virus was not an infinite engine of evolution. While it could trigger multiple, rapid rounds of genetic recombination and accelerate biological adaptation, it did have its limits. Still, to William Birkin, those limits were merely temporary obstacles on the road to a higher form of life. Ethan sat in the flickering half-light of the underground laboratory, his eyes fixed on Wesker as the older man spoke in measured tones. Dr. William Birkin's original dream was to create a god-human, an unstoppable being born of the G-virus, but its chaotic nature ultimately ruined everything. Birkin lost control of the strain's variability, and the project collapsed in disaster. I picked up the pieces. First, I developed a stabilized, controllable variant of the G-virus. Then I turned my attention back to the original strain. I needed to prove it could be harnessed safely, or at least more predictably. That's where the ninja unit came in. Wesker leaned forward, steepling his fingers. They volunteered without hesitation. They believed strength was worth any risk, even death. I warned them the odds were grim, but they insisted. Dozens of them lined up for injection. Ethan felt a chill at the old man's calm description. What happened? Predictably, most of them died almost immediately. The G-virus is far more aggressive than the T-virus. I moderated the dosage to avoid what Birkin suffered, complete neural overload. But still, the mortality rate was staggering. It sent the survivors fleeing. Yet a few more stepped forward, eager to test their limits. So I adjusted the process. This time, each volunteer received a different dose, so we could isolate the exact threshold between lethal and transformative. Hundreds more underwent the procedure. Almost all perished within hours. Wesker paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Only one soldier survived. Ethan's heart pounded. Just one? Wesker nodded. He emerged from the chamber alive, but fundamentally changed. A single, massive eye now dominates his chest. It's unsettling, but it proves the G-virus can be controlled to some extent. And that, Ethan, he fixed the younger man with a sharp gaze, is only the beginning. Ethan's eyes looked nothing like his old, familiar brown. Now they were rimmed with swollen crimson veins, the unmistakable hallmark of the G-Virus's own consciousness, the so-called big eyes that usually herald a host's total surrender. Yet against every expectation, Ethan had not lost himself. Instead, his physical power had exploded to terrifying new heights. When he'd first been infected, he was only a Jinnin. Now the raw strength coiled in his arms could rival or even surpass that of a Jonin taijutsu specialist. His chakra reserves had swollen just as dramatically, matching the output of an elite shinobi. In what should have been a downward spiral, Ethan had vaulted into the realm of Jonin-level power. Intrigued and alarmed, the lab's research team ran exhaustive tests, blood assays, chakra analyses, neural scans, searching for the key to his resilience. Time and again, the answer pointed back to one thing: Ethan's unique chakra signature. In the shinobi world, chakra isn't merely raw energy. It's the fusion of mind and body, and at a deeper level, a conduit for life force itself. It seems that this very bond is what anchors Ethan's will, preventing the G-Virus's separate consciousness from overwhelming him, and even allowing him to bend its power to his own ends. Alex, operating out of Poison Village in River Country, has been running his own virus experiments, and his latest creation, the Black Light virus, is brutal in its simplicity. He started by enhancing two existing strains, Project Red Light, the Hopetown virus, and the Untouchables virus. Then he blended them with his new Black Light strain. The results have been chilling. A few of the test subjects mutated into so-called Supreme Hunters, but even more alarmingly, several fully controlled infected bodies emerged. These victims exhibit physical prowess and chakra reserves on par with Jonin-level shinobi, and they can shift their very form at will, slipping between human and monstrous shapes in an instant. Chapter 936, Inception of Stealth Operations. Ethan surveyed the training grounds with quiet satisfaction. He knew from experience in games and comics that evolvers could exist in theory, but true ninjas in this world operated on an entirely different level. Drawing on that conceptual blueprint, he had successfully merged the Blacklight virus with their biology and forged an entirely new class, the Blacklight Ninjas. Every development, from initial infection protocols to training regimens, had proceeded exactly as he'd anticipated. Now it was time to move on to the next phase of his plan. The enhancements granted by the Blacklight virus went far beyond a mere boost in strength, speed, or regenerative capacity. Most remarkable was the ninjas' newfound ability to camouflage and reshape themselves at will. Traditional ninjutsu techniques relied on illusion and sleight of hand. This virus rewrote cells from within. Once infected, a ninja could alter their pigmentation, texture, even body contours, merging flawlessly with any environment. In effect, they became living shadows, predators unseen until it was too late. This invisibility formed the heart of what Wesker had dubbed the Lurker Plan. Though they certainly possessed the power to march openly against rival clans and crush them outright, Wesker insisted on restraint. Their strikes would be surgical, delivered in silence and covered by darkness. No grand displays of force, no overt provocations, just a series of precise eliminations that would leave opponents bewildered and fearful. Standing at the edge of the courtyard, Ethan ran through the final logistics in his mind: insertion routes, exfiltration points, encrypted comms, contingency protocols. Any misstep could expose the entire operation. Yet for all the risks, he felt confident. The age of open warfare among the shinobi was coming to an end. Soon, the world would know the name of the true invisible killers, Blacklight Ninjas. In the shinobi world, raw power commands respect and political alliances shift like sand. Direct conquest by brute force only breeds endless war and chaos, so Ethan's allies have chosen a subtler and far more effective strategy: infiltration. Dubbed the Lurker Plan, it aims to dismantle the 5 great ninja villages from within, turning their own ranks against them. Alex recruited a small army of operatives, ninjas infected with his experimental Blacklight virus. This virus alters their cells at the molecular level, granting perfect camouflage and shape-shifting abilities that ordinary shinobi simply cannot detect. Traditional ninja rely on chakra signatures to spot genjutsu or hidden transformations. If chakra shimmers on a person's face, they could be an imposter. But these Blacklight agents leave no chakra trace. Their disguises are woven into their flesh, making them utterly invisible to standard chakra sensing. Their first target is Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves. Its border sits just across the riverlands, making it the most accessible of the five greats. Under the cover of night, blacklight ninjas will slip through patrols, insinuate themselves into local clans and guard units, and begin sowing discord. Fragment by fragment, they will weaken Konoha's defenses from the inside out, until the village falls without a single pitched battle. If the plan succeeds, the other four villages will be next. The era of covert domination has begun. Konoha Village sits at the heart of the Land of Fire, a bastion of ninja power and a cradle of legendary shinobi. Its military might and rich cultural heritage make it one of the most formidable forces in the ninja world. Ironically, it's precisely this strength that turns Konoha into the perfect testing ground for covert operations. Alex assembled a hand-picked team of blacklight ninjas, warriors renowned not only for their lethal skill, but also for their psychological resilience and uncanny adaptability. When night falls, the very edges of Konoha seem to disappear beneath an invisible shroud. Like wraiths, these operatives slip through the darkness, now crystalline in focus, now melting into thin air as if one with the night itself. Among them is Ethan, a master of concealment. Slipping into the role of a humble merchant, he joins a trading caravan bound for Konoha. Clad in simple traveler's garb and wearing a disarming smile, Ethan chats and laughs with the other merchants. All the while, he carefully charts the caravan's route, planning how best to exploit this perfectly ordinary opportunity to penetrate Konoha's inner defenses. Ethan had witnessed the magic and the madness of the Poison Village firsthand, and he knew he'd made the right choice. Now, more committed than ever to his undercover mission, he hungered for greater power. To climb higher, he needed to earn more merit points, and that meant taking on riskier assignments. At the same time, another squad of blacklight ninjas adopted a bolder tactic. Exploiting the special properties of the blacklight virus, they reshaped themselves into Konoha Patrol Shinobi. Dressed in official uniforms and carrying standard weapons, these imposters blended seamlessly into every corner of the village. Ordinary villagers, and even many low-ranking ninja, couldn't see through the disguise. By day, they performed routine patrols. By night, they snooped into sensitive areas, gathering intelligence on Konoha's defenses and daily rhythms in preparation for the assault to come. Under the soft glow of moonlight, Konoha appeared tranquil. Yet beneath its peaceful surface, a hidden current stirred. Like ghosts slipping through the shadows, the blacklight operatives silently chipped away at the foundations of this ancient ninja stronghold. A figure wrapped head to toe in jet-black garb slipped through the shadows of the night, the folds of his cloak barely rustling as he settled onto a rooftop. Clutching a high-powered telescope, he swept its lens over the winding lanes and courtyards below, his keen gaze cutting through darkness like a blade. Not far off, another operative crouched amid swaying treetops, leaves hiding him from prying eyes, while he tuned in to the hushed voices echoing from Konoha's high council chamber. Every strategic deployment, every whispered political maneuver was committed to memory, then transformed into complex ciphers and relayed back to the Poison Village. But these blacklight ninjas did more than spy. With subtle rumors and carefully planted stories, they began to steer public sentiment against Konoha. In tea houses and market squares, even on the training grounds of the Ninja Academy, skewed gossip spread like wildfire. What started as innocent chatter soon coalesced into distrust and suspicion, an invisible tide quietly reshaping the hearts and minds of Konoha's people. Once unwavering voices against war began to falter, replaced by an unbridled craving for peace and a paralyzing fear of unseen threats. Even more alarming, the blacklight ninjas were quietly neutralizing anyone who might expose them. By siphoning chakra and memories from their victims, they not only stole their abilities and identities, but also perfectly imitated their appearance and mannerisms. Not even Konoha's elite had suspected that enemies were walking among them. These imposters remained active within the village, but they were no longer their former comrades. Instead, they were blacklight agents. At critical moments, they leaked vital intelligence or launched devastating attacks, ripping gaping holes in Konoha's defenses. As the Blacklight's shadowy campaign deepened, a sense of unease settled over the Hidden Leaf village. Bonds of trust, once rock solid, began to crack. Even the most steadfast advocates of the upcoming joint operation found themselves hesitating, their faith shaken by the threat lurking within their ranks. Rumors spread like wildfire throughout Konoha. Whispers claimed that the village's highest leaders had been bought off by outside forces, while others insisted that war would only bring devastation, and that peace was the only way forward. Those accusations cut deeper than any blade, severing the bonds of trust between ninja brothers and sisters. Before long, suspicion slithered through every street and alley like a virulent plague, plunging the entire village into an unprecedented crisis. Chapter 937, Prodding Konoha. "What's going on, Danzo?" Hiruzen Sarutobi asked, narrowing his eyes. He couldn't ignore the growing discontent within the village. It wasn't just idle chatter. Shinobi from one clan after another were voicing criticisms, and when even the rank-and-file started grumbling, it was impossible to overlook. After all, a complaint from a civilian ninja barely registers, but when a clan leader speaks up, everyone pays attention. Danzo Shimura leaned back, equally unsettled. "I'm not sure," he admitted. Konoha had intended to respond to the Poison Village's looming threat by forging an alliance with the Cloud and Rock villages for a coordinated strike. Yet now, it seemed Konoha itself was hesitating to go to war. Hiruzen knew that the Sand Village lacked the capacity to carry out their part of the agreement. If the Sands couldn't uphold the alliance, they'd simply shift their focus to other potential partners. It was a matter of diplomatic recalibration. But why was Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves, so resistant? Hiruzen's expression hardened. It was time to get to the bottom of this. Chapter X. The Hidden Leaf Village is fractured. In the council chamber, Shimura Danzo paced before the third Hokage's desk, his brow tightly drawn. "Hiruzen-sama," he began, voice tense, "Konoha's unity is crumbling. Some believe the village is ready to sacrifice everyone's interests in a preemptive strike against the Poison Village. Yet Poison Village is barely more than a hamlet. It poses no genuine threat to warrant this level of alarm." Danzo stopped and folded his arms. Worse still, word has spread that a Kumogakure delegation once attempted to steal the Hyuga clan's Byakugan secrets. After the mission failed, Konoha's leadership not only refused to back the Hyuga, but even demanded the clan hand over the assassin as a condition for renewed peace talks. Cornered, the Hyuga reluctantly offered the body of clan leader Hisashi's younger brother to settle the matter. He shook his head. If even a powerful family like the Hyuga can be treated this way, what hope do the rest of us have? We're beset on one side by the Poison Ninja, and on the other by our own internal divisions. From a nearby seat, Ethan watched the exchange in silence, his jaw set. The tension in the room was a stark reminder that Konoha's greatest threat might not come from outside, but from within. Elliot met Danzo's gaze, determination flickering in his eyes. Danzo sighed deeply. "Hiruzen-sama, I am as troubled by this as you are." Ethan sat quietly at the edge of the Hokage's council chamber, listening as Hiruzen Sarutobi and his advisor debated the growing threat. "Although the Poison Village is militarily weak," Hiruzen began, his brow furrowed, "their mastery of toxin techniques is unlike anything we've seen. If we don't act now, they could become a far more dangerous threat down the line. Our plan was to join forces with Kumogakure and Iwagakure to eradicate them once and for all. But the villagers don't share our urgency," the advisor interrupted, frustration lacing his voice. "All they see are the immediate costs, lives lost, fields laid waste, while they turn a blind eye to the peace we're trying to secure." Hiruzen sighed, leaning back in his chair. Worry glimmered in his eyes. "They focus only on the here and now, never on the years of stability that hang in the balance. They still don't understand what we're trying to save or what it might demand of us." As the two elders spoke, Ethan's mind drifted back to a darker moment in Konoha's history, the Kumogakure delegation incident. A mission meant to strengthen alliances had instead descended into tragedy and treachery. In the aftermath, the Hyuga clan bore the greatest burden of all. Hyuga Hisashi, once destined to lead with honor and respect, sacrificed himself to uphold his family's name and to preserve the fragile peace of the village. He became the invisible casualty of political machinations, his memory a wound no shinobi could forget. That grim episode still cast its long shadow over every council meeting. It had sown seeds of doubt among Konoha's people, leaving them wary of the elders' decisions. As Ethan watched Hiruzen and his advisor exchange uneasy glances, he understood their fear. History, once stained, refuses to be erased. And now, faced with a new menace, they had to convince their own village to trust in the sacrifices they believed were necessary, sacrifices they hoped wouldn't come at the cost of more lives like Hisashi's. Now that these memories have been examined again, it's clear there's another crack in our already fragile wall of trust, Danzo declared, his voice tight with frustration. The villagers are beginning to question whether our decisions truly serve the greater good, or simply indulge the ambitions of a select few. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, sat across from him, puffing thoughtfully on his pipe. After a moment, he exhaled a plume of smoke and said, "This situation is far more complex than we anticipated." He set the pipe aside and fixed Danzo with a steady gaze. "You must get to the bottom of this anti-war sentiment. Such widespread resistance doesn't spring up without a reason." Danzo nodded, though his expression betrayed unease. "I've dispatched our finest intelligence operatives to investigate, but so far there are no definitive leads." Leaning back, he added quietly, "This wave of dissent is about more than just fear of battle. It speaks to a deeper distrust in Konoha's leadership and anxiety about an uncertain future. In reality, this sentiment didn't arise overnight. For years, Konoha has stood at the head of the 5 great ninja villages, its strength and influence unrivaled, but internal divisions have never fully healed. After enduring one conflict after another, the villagers' hunger for peace has only grown more desperate, and any rumor of war now sets their nerves on edge. Among Konoha's many potential threats, the Poison Village was merely another name on the list, until the Blacklight Ninjas set their plan in motion. Disguised as respected Konoha dignitaries and persuasive civilian leaders, they used carefully crafted rhetoric to fan the flames of fear and resentment. Exploiting the public's wariness of high-level decisions, they painted the Poison Village as innocent and defenseless, and cast Konoha's proposed joint operation as an unwarranted invasion. How could Konoha mount a coordinated strike under such scrutiny? With nothing more than a few well-placed lies, Alex and the agents he commanded had thrown Konoha off balance, turning its people against their own leadership and plunging the village into turmoil. The villagers and the clan elders could see only risks, never rewards, in wiping out the Poison Village. In the past, Hidden Leaf had acted alone, and everyone else simply endured Konoha's decisions. Now, however, the clandestine Blacklight Shinobi had slipped into the village under the guises of esteemed jonin or popular civilian guards. With so many respected voices demanding action, even the Hokage could not ignore them, and their unity gave courage to those who had previously remained silent. Across the borders, the Hidden Cloud and Stone villages held their ground. The proposed joint operation to strike the Poison Village had come from Konoha. Now that Leaf itself refused to move forward, neither Cloud nor Stone would risk their own forces. They'd learned long ago that grudgingly entering a battle without full support led only to needless casualties. Onoki, Lord of the Hidden Cloud, suspected Konoha of playing a deeper game. Let poison exhaust itself, then reap the spoils once the dust had settled. But when his undercover agents in the Hidden Leaf returned with urgent reports of Konoha's true plight, Onoki resolved at once to send reinforcements. If the Poison Village fell, it would be by alliance, not by manipulation. Amid all the threats looming on the horizon, none consumed Onoki's thoughts like the Hidden Leaf Village. The Poison Village might one day become dangerous, but its plans and true potent Ayal remained murky. Konoha, by contrast, was a living wound in his heart. Only when the leaf fell could he at last rest and reunite with his old teacher in peace. Convinced of this, Onoki cast aside any real concern for the Poison Village and turned his full attention inward. He called upon his spies, Rock Village shinobi long embedded in Konoha, and ordered them to sow seeds of discord throughout the village. Secretly, he encouraged rumors, inflamed old rivalries, and fanned the flames of suspicion between clans. Not surprisingly, the Hidden Cloud Village adopted the same approach. To them, The poison village was a problem for another day, one that could be extinguished with a handful of well-timed strikes. But Konoha's downfall had to come first. If they could plunge the leaf into chaos and then deliver a crippling blow, perhaps by wiping out the Hyuga clan, the triumph would be all the sweeter. Only then, they believed, would their path to victory over every foe be clear. Chapter 938. Boros's quest to find a true powerhouse had hit an unexpected dead end. He'd spent countless days roaming the vast ninja realm, exploring mist-shrouded forests, ancient ruins, and hidden villages, seeking an opponent who met his exacting old-school standards. Yet no one he encountered measured up to the legendary warrior he imagined. Just as his burning desire for a worthy fight was starting to wane, fate intervened. He was crossing a barren plateau, the wind whipping his cloak, when a figure suddenly materialized before him. At first glance, the stranger seemed human, but an unmistakable, otherworldly aura emanated from him, so potent it made the very air ripple. The man's back was slightly bent with age, yet his eyes blazed with ancient insight. 2 short horns curved from his forehead, and his long chestnut hair spilled freely over a flawless white robe. Across his chest were 6 black magatama-shaped sigils, each throbbing with hidden power. On his back swirled a rotating crimson vortex, and just beneath it, 9 glowing magatama were arranged in a perfect 3x3 grid, silent conduits to the mysteries of heaven and earth. The old man raised a weathered hand, barring Boros's path. His voice was calm, yet weighted by centuries of knowledge. "Tell me," he said, his gaze locking onto Boros's, "are you one of the aliens from the stars, too? Are you an energy being?" Boros's senses were razor-sharp. As a semi-energy life form, he could perceive the very essence of everything around him. At that moment, he distinctly felt the old man's unique presence, a being unbound by flesh and composed entirely of energy. A flicker of surprise passed through him. Such an existence was exceedingly rare, even in a universe brimming with wonders. "Strictly speaking, I'm dead," the old man replied with calm indifference. "Only my chakra endures, though you might call it a soul." His voice held a detachment that transcended life and death, as if he had long since seen through all worldly illusions. "You may call me Otsutsuki Hagoromo." To anyone steeped in ninja lore, that name carried legendary weight. He was the Six-Paths Sage, the progenitor of ninjutsu, and a godlike figure revered by countless shinobi. To Boros, this one-eyed warrior from another planet, Hagoromo's reputation simply marked him as a formidable opponent whoever might prove worthy of challenge. Boros studied the aged sage intently, noting that despite his mythical status, the old man bore no resemblance to any creature of the ninja world. Ethan felt it the instant Boros stepped forward. A raw, overwhelming will to fight, an oppressive force so immense it seemed as if the very earth might crumble beneath it. This was no mere humanoid before him, but a living cataclysm. He forced himself to remain calm. "You're an alien from another universe, aren't you?" he asked. Boros considered the question, a faint curl of a smile on his lips. "You could say that." Ethan's gaze sharpened. He knew all too well the reputation of the Otsutsuki clan, beings of boundless power and insatiable ambition. If Boros were one of them, the ninja world could be in grave danger. "Then why have you come here? Are you with the Otsutsuki?" He kept his tone measured, but his knuckles itched for battle. If Boros's intentions weren't clear soon, Ethan might have no choice but to strike first, though even he wasn't certain he could prevail. Boros shook his head, eyes burning with excitement. "My name is Boros," he said. "I have no ties to the Otsutsuki. I came here for one reason only, to find the strongest warrior in this world and challenge him to a fight." There was no hint of malice in his voice, only pure, unbridled hunger for combat. Ethan recognized that look, the desire to lay everything on the line for the ultimate opponent. And in that moment, he knew he might be the only one who could satisfy Boros's challenge. "You've got quite the talent," Boros said suddenly, his eyes flashing as he fixed his gaze on Hagoromo Otsutsuki. It was the look of a warrior sizing up his next great challenge. Hagoromo offered a gentle, rueful smile and shook his head. He understood exactly what Boros, an insatiable hunger for battle. The ninja world had its share of bloodthirsty clans. Take the Kaguya, whose very name strikes fear into every shinobi's heart. But Boros carried an otherworldly aura, a power drawn from distant stars, and that made him infinitely more dangerous. "I am nothing more than a lingering chakra consciousness," Hagoromo admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "I can no longer wield ninjutsu as I did in life." Undeterred, Boros stepped closer, his excitement barely contained. The chase was just beginning. Ethan could sense that even more powerful beings might be hiding somewhere in the shinobi world, waiting for a challenger like him. Determined to find them, he approached the Sage of Six Paths, Otsutsuki Hagoromo, and asked, "Tell me, who is the strongest ninja in this world? I want to confront him and test my limits." Hagoromo fell silent for a moment, then forced a wry smile. He had heard of Ethan's unrelenting drive and his near-obsessive madness for battle, and he knew what this request would mean for the shinobi world. "Ethan," the sage said finally, his voice calm, "there simply is no ninja here capable of facing you." Even without true chakra, Ethan's aura blazed with formidable power, so great in fact that Hagoromo doubted he could defeat him in a straight fight, even at the height of his own strength. Of course, the sage possessed the Six Paths' bizarre, rule-bending abilities, which could turn the tide. Sealing Ethan's powers, ripping out his soul, and a host of other strategies stood at Hagoromo's command. But Ethan's indestructible energy and near immortality left him at best slightly disadvantaged against someone of Six Paths' caliber. All the same, the sage recognized the restless hunger in Ethan's eyes, an insatiable pursuit of ever greater foes, and he knew that, if Ethan's hunt continued, the very foundations of the shinobi world would tremble under the power of his challenge. When numerical creatures clash with mechanical beasts, the numericals almost always suffer the greater losses. "Seriously?" Boros scoffed, refusing to accept the statistic. He turned to his lieutenants. "You actually believe he's some kind of hero? Keep the bodies piling up, and eventually someone will try to stop you. Then the so-called strong ones will emerge." Far above the battlefield, the chakra essence of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, once the Sage of Six Paths, stirred like a breeze through ancient leaves, laced with helplessness and hope. Having witnessed the intricate power struggles of the shinobi world, he knew he was now no more than a shadow, unable to step into reality. All he could do was pray that some hidden champion sensed Boros's threat and rose to meet it. "I can only hope someone in the ninja world has the strength and courage to stand against him," he murmured. Below, the hidden mist village, renowned for its assassins and secrecy, became Boros's new hunting ground. He strode through its fog-shrouded streets, utterly indifferent to the terrified villagers fleeing in every direction. To him, their lives were as insignificant as ants underfoot. Ethan's gaze locked onto any formidable opponent who could truly challenge him, hungry to reclaim the long-lost thrill and satisfaction of battle. Chapter 939, Boros Challenges the Hidden Mist Village. Ethan, a rebel ninja badly wounded from his last mission, struggled to stay on his feet as the Hidden Mist Village's elite ninja hunting unit closed in. Their kunai flashed in the dim light, and every one of them was determined to bring him in, dead or alive. Sweat and blood mixed in rivulets down Ethan's face, but before he could draw another breath, a thunderous boom erupted through the battlefield. An invisible wave of pressure slammed into the hunters, tossing them off balance. Every shinobi present felt an unfamiliar dread coil in their chests, as if unseen hands were tightening around their hearts. Their hair stood on end, and they gaped at one another, searching desperately for the source of this overwhelming force. Then, as if summoned by their fear, a lone figure materialized out of the swirling mist. He was impossibly tall and powerfully built. His skin shimmered a metallic blue, and perched in the center of his forehead was a single horizontal eye, cold and unblinking. The silence that fell over the clearing was absolute, as though the world itself dared not breathe. "Tell me," the alien warrior intoned, his voice a deep rumble that shook the leaves on nearby trees, "where is the strongest among you?" There was no malice in his tone, only pure, unadulterated inquiry. And yet every syllable struck like a warhammer, driving the mist ninjas to their knees. One of them, braver, or perhaps more foolish than the rest, forced himself to rise. He steadied a quivering hand on the hilt of his blade. Who are you?" he stammered, voice cracking under the weight of that single, unwavering gaze. His question hung in the air, unanswered, as the towering stranger's unblinking eye pierced through the mist, and into the very souls of those who dared stand before him. "I am Boros, the universe's strongest warrior," he declared, his voice calm and cold. "I've come only to find someone who can match me." The Mist Ninja, face shadowed by swirling fog, snapped back. "Go to hell!" Rage and fear flickered behind his mask. With a muttered incantation, he activated his Kirigakure technique, hoping to vanish into the mist or strike Boros from hiding. But before the ninja could fully disappear, Boros's gaze fixed on him. Time seemed to slow, and the ninja's every movement felt clumsy and exposed. Boros smiled, a cruel twist of amusement and contempt. In an instant, he reappeared in front of the ninja. One hand shot forward, slamming through the ninja's chest as though it were nothing more than tissue paper. With a sickening crack, he withdrew the beating heart from the body. The crimson organ throbbed violently in his grasp, yet all life had already fled from it. A palpable wave of dread washed over the onlookers. He tossed the heart aside like a discarded stone. "Is this your idea of strength?" Boros sneered, his voice heavy with disappointment. The assembled shinobi stood frozen, horrified by the brutal display. They had never faced an enemy so merciless or powerful. Terror coursed through their veins like wildfire, and they exchanged frantic, despairing glances. "He killed Akai with a single blow," one whispered. "Where did this monster come from?" another cried. "What do we do now?" These ninja hunters boasted of countless victories against rogue shinobi, but they had never stood before a true master, someone of the caliber of the legendary Seven Swordsmen. Boros towered over them, his voice calm and implacable. "If you want to live, you will show me your strongest warrior," he ordered. If not, before he could finish, he vanished and reappeared behind a trembling mist ninja. With a single cruel swipe, he stabbed through the man's chest, yanked out his heart, and held it aloft as it throbbed in his palm. The hunters recoiled in horror. One officer, voice quavering, managed, This is barbaric. We're just ordinary shinobi. We can't." Boros tilted his head, pity flashing in his eyes. "Barbaric? No, this is simply survival. In every age, only the strong ID who lives and who dies." He crushed the still-beating heart in his fist, blood dripping onto the ground. "Now," he continued softly, "bring me your greatest champion, or you will all share his fate." Silence fell like a shroud. Their fear was absolute, and the choice they faced grim. Under Boros's unblinking gaze, the brave among them swallowed hard and vowed to fetch their best, but none could say how or if they would ever return. Ethan's voice cut through the fog like a blade. "On the grand stage of the universe, only the law of the jungle endures. I'm giving you an opportunity to meet a true powerhouse. Consider it mercy." Though he spoke with calm ease, the raw authority behind his words brooked no challenge. The Mist Village pursuit squad exchanged worried glances. They knew that opposing someone of Ethan's caliber would be pointless and fatal. Yet the alternative, escorting him back to Kirigakure, felt like walking willingly into a trap. Would their superiors brand them traitors for bringing in such a formidable outsider? A bead of sweat traced its way down the leader's temple. "Mizukage-sama can handle him," he blurted, more to steady his own nerves than persuade his comrades. After all, their Mizukage was a perfect Jinchuriki, and one of the 5 absolute strongest shinobi in the world. Surely even Ethan could not match that. With reluctant resolve, they knelt before Ethan. "Ethan-sama," the leader announced, voice trembling with a mixture of fear and duty, "we will guide you back to Kirigakure. First, we must send word to the village." Ethan inclined his head once, his expression unreadable. As the ninjas sprang into motion, someone muttered, "Resistance is futile." In that moment, the die was cast. The Mist Village's juggernaut had acknowledged their supremacy, and Kirigakure's fate would soon be sealed. Boros didn't care whether his adversary called in reinforcements, spread word to their strongest shinobi, or laid cunning traps. He was fearless, and all he wanted was a fight. Unhurried, he tailed the pursuing ninja squad, matching their pace with ease. In fact, he could have left them in the dust if he'd chosen to speed up. At Kirigakure village, the Mizukage Yagura sat brooding in his dimly lit chamber. News had just reached him that the Kirito ninja, unexpectedly, had returned ahead of schedule. Normally stoic, the Jinchuriki of the three-tailed beast Isobu now seethed with barely restrained fury. Never before had he felt such an outright challenge to his authority. "Is this what we've come to?" Yagura's voice rumbled like distant thunder. An outsider dares to trample over Kirigakure as if we were nothing. Shadows flickered across his face, contorted in rage. He rose to his feet, and with a surge of chakra so intense, the air itself seemed to tremble. The Mizukage prepared to unleash Kirigakure's wrath on the one name that shook every mist ninja's heart, Boros. Ethan could feel the three-tailed beast's chakra churning just beneath his skin, poised to obey its master's call at a moment's notice. Before him, one of the Hidden Mist's pursuit shinobi dropped to his knees, voice quivering with fear. "My lord Mizukage, this man. He's extraordinarily powerful. He's demanded a duel with the village's strongest ninja," a second pursuer added, "and threatened to kill us all if we refuse." A cold smile curved Lord Yagura's lips. "Such gall," he muttered. "If he's so eager to meet death, then we'll let him have it, and teach him the true strength of Kirigakure." Without another word, Yagura sent ravens soaring to every corner of the village, summoned the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen, mobilized the jonin, gather all elite forces. He even ordered secret defensive arrays and deadly traps laid around the perimeter, ensuring no surprise could reach them. All the while, Boros strolled casually at the head of the pursuit squad, seemingly unaware of the storm that swirled ahead. As they pressed closer, the great tower of the Hidden Mist village materialized through the rolling fog, its silent presence a reminder of the danger and mystery that awaited them. Ethan's footsteps rang out with deliberate power, each strike of his boots leaving a clear impression in the mist-draped earth at the outskirts of the Hidden Mist village. His tall, solitary silhouette loomed through the haze as if the very air around him had frozen. Silent winds dared not stir, afraid they might miss the momentous clash that was about to unfold. He came to a halt and slowly took in his surroundings, a faint, knowing smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "At last," he murmured, "we've arrived." That quiet smile betrayed 2 things, a hunger for the challenges that lay hidden within the fog, and an unwavering faith in his own strength. Dark eyes swept the tree line and watchtowers, dismissing every flicker of movement or lantern glow as insignificant, as mere motes of dust that dared spy on him. Behind him, the shinobi scouts who had trailed him this far felt the hairs on their necks stand on end. They all sensed it. Once Ethan set foot in the depths of the Hidden Mist village, he would unleash a storm of power they had never before witnessed. Yet despite their fear, they tightened their grips on their weapons, exchanged a final glance of grim resolve, and pressed forward into the stillness. Ethan stepped into the Hidden Mist village, and for a moment it felt as if the entire settlement had fallen silent. Behind shuttered doors and rain-thickened windows, villagers pressed their faces to the glass, hearts pounding at the sight of this unannounced visitor. At the village entrance, Mizukage Yagura stood surrounded by his most trusted shinobi. He fixed Ethan with a steely gaze. "So you claim to be the strongest warrior to walk our streets?" Ethan met his stare without flinching. "That's exactly what I intend to prove. Show me the might of the Hidden Mist village, if you're worthy of my full power." A mocking laugh escaped Yagura's lips. "Very well. I am Yagura, 5th Mizukage. Today you'll learn exactly why our village is feared across the shinobi world." With a sharp command, Yagura waved his hand, and a flood of ninja, not dozens but hundreds, surged forward. Kunai and Senbon whistled through the air, chakra-infused jutsu crackled into being around them, and the mist itself thickened, coiling into a living net designed to overwhelm and entrap. Ethan remained perfectly still, absorbing the onslaught. He wasn't moving yet. Let them weave their trap and drain their chakra. Then, he would show Yagura and every Hidden Mist shinobi just how deep his strength ran. No one hesitates to sacrifice their vehicle to save the king. After all, the Mist Village can field nearly 1,000 shinobi, a force even the Ninetails would struggle to match in pure chakra. Their only mistake was underestimating Boros. Boros noticed Kujiakura standing firm while his own men surged forward in a brazen charge. He understood their tactic at once and dismissed it. Numbers meant nothing to him. The tidal wave of ninja closing in stirred no fear in his expression. If anything, his eyes shone brighter. The single, enormous eye embedded in his chest ignited with a brilliant blue light, as though awakening some ancient, untamed power within him. As the glow intensified, dark veins writhed beneath his flesh, radiating an ever more terrifying aura. Boros was condensing raw energy, gathering it into a single cataclysmic strike. Around him, the air crackled with imminent destruction. Anyone caught in its path would be utterly annihilated. One blow from him could scorch a crater dozens of square kilometers wide into this very starship. Boros's ultimate technique was known far and wide as his small fry cannon, a devastating beam capable of turning everything in its path to dust in the blink of an eye. He liked to call it his weapon for sweeping up the weak and insignificant. "Small fry cannon," Boros roared. The single, unblinking eye in the center of his chest snapped open, unleashing a searing torrent of cobalt blue energy. Where that beam passed, the very air seemed to crack and scorch. Walls of water jutsu shattered like glass. Vapor hissed as it vanished. Hidden mist shinobi caught in its path were obliterated instantly. No cries, no struggle, only absence. The beam tore through the battlefield with inhuman speed and precision, as if a rip had opened in the fabric of reality itself. Desperate figures tried to flee, but panic-stricken feet could not outrun the onrushing blaze of power. In their widening eyes burned equal parts disbelief and terror, last witnesses to the cannon's merciless sweep. In seconds, there was nothing left but scorched earth and the echo of Boros's triumphant roar. Everyone froze at the sight. Never had they witnessed such a fearsome attack, as if the very sky had bled away its color. Yagura's face went deathly pale. He realized too late that he had completely underestimated Boros. This strange newcomer wielded a destructive power on par with a tailed beast bomb, enough to plunge the entire Hidden Mist village into ruin. Just as the shockwave threatened to engulf him, Yagura vanished from view and narrowly escaped by unleashing a torrent of water-release jutsu. He knew he couldn't overpower Boros by sheer numbers alone. He needed a new strategy. Damn him! Refusing to yield, Yagura drew in a steady breath and let his chakra ignite like a roaring flame. His body trembled as that fiery energy began to reshape him, preparing him for the battle to come. Ethan felt the dark red chakra of the tailed beast surge through him like an unstoppable tide. Within seconds, he'd become a monstrous hybrid, half human, half beast, his ultimate trump card, the half-tailed transformation. His muscles swelled grotesquely, veins pulsing with crimson energy, as if a slumbering titan were waking from its millennia-long sleep. The sheer force of his presence made the ground tremble beneath their feet. A suffocating tension gripped the battlefield, each inhalation heavy with the promise of an earth-shattering collision. With a roar that split the air, Ethan lunged at Boros, but Boros met him without a hint of fear, only an eager spark in his eyes, as though he'd been waiting for this very moment. Instead of dodging, Boros simply raised his fist, inviting a head-on clash. Ethan allowed himself a feral grin. Boros was playing right into his hand. Channeling tailed beast chakra into his palm, Ethan unleashed his signature coral palm technique. Dark red energy coalesced around his hand, erupting into jagged coral formations that crackled with lethal intent. Wherever those thorny growths made contact, they would burrow into flesh and armor alike, sprouting murderous coral spikes that tore through defenses without mercy. Ethan braced himself. He knew all too well how devastating this technique was against anyone relying solely on physical strength. Boros, however, had the audacity to meet him head-on. There would be no graceful dodge, no clever feint. He forced his palm forward, aiming to halt Boros's charging fist, and paid the price instantly. The collision erupted in a thunderous crack. Bones splintered beneath the impact, and pain like molten fire tore through Ethan's arm. In a heartbeat, his hand was reduced to rubble. Staring down at the ruined remnants of his palm, Ethan tasted blood, but even that agony was a price he was prepared to bear. Boros's grin only widened as he readied his next strike. Chapter 9 and 41, Little Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon versus Tailed Beast Ball. Boros waved a single finger, as if the coral palm, a technique that would terrify any ordinary warrior, were nothing more than a summer breeze. Not a single ripple marred his composure. His eyes glinted with cold disdain, the arrogance of one who stands unrivaled above all life. Across the empty battlefield, Goji Yagura's scream cut through the air like a harsh indictment of the vast power gap between them. As the Jinchuriki of the three-tailed beast Isobu, Yagura should have been an unignorable force. his form cloaked in the beast's radiant chakra. That brilliant aura was supposed to be his greatest shield, his trump card, against overwhelming foes. Yet against Boros's unfathomable might, the chakra armor shattered like fragile paper. In a single devastating blow, Boros severed Yagura's left arm, spraying blood and chakra in a red arc across the ground. Damn! How could I fall so easily? Yagura roared, fury and disbelief churning in his heart. Fueled by a furious resolve, Ethan made a decisive choice, and his body answered. As his will flared to life, his skin hardened into living stone, and his frame swelled to colossal proportions. In moments, he stood reborn as the Three-Tails Isobu, a massive turtle-like tailed beast clad in a spiked, impenetrable carapace. Each thunderous step shook the earth, and with its towering shell, the creature cast a forbidding shadow over the battlefield. A deep, resonant roar shattered the air, rippling through the surrounding space like a shockwave. Ethan's consciousness had merged completely with the Isobu's primal spirit, filling him with raw, limitless power, and the unshakable confidence to confront Boros head-on. Ethan drew in a steady breath and began to channel the tailed beast chakra surging within him. He knew this technique, Tailed Beast Bomb, would decide the fate of their battle. As the pinnacle of S-rank ninjutsu, it could shatter mountains and turn rivers to mist, dimming sun and moon alike. He called upon the chakra, mixing its yin and yang aspects in precisely a 2:8 ratio. Deep in his core, he felt a dark orb coalesce, a sphere of raw energy spinning faster and faster between his palms. Gradually, it solidified into a dense obsidian-black sphere, humming with barely contained power. Across the clearing, Boros watched in silence. Even from a distance, he could sense the unprecedented intensity radiating from Ethan's attack. To anyone else, that alone would be terrifying, but not to Boros. A thrill coursed through him instead, igniting his competitive spirit. "Not bad at all," Boros said, a faint smile tugging at one corner of his mouth. His voice carried respect, for a warrior who'd push him to unleash his full strength. He knew that only by facing such a formidable opponent could he truly taste excitement and satisfaction. So he resolved to engage Guju Yagura in an all-out clash of energy. "Mini collapsing star roar cannon," Ethan growled, funneling every ounce of his strength to its limit. Though this scaled-down version consumed far less energy than the full-power collapsed star roar cannon, its destructive force was no less terrifying. Now that he had entered the divine realm, his abilities had been naturally amplified, and this attack was one of the fruits of that enhancement. In a single, fluid motion, Ethan drew in the universe's raw power and expelled it in a colossal blast from his open mouth. The shockwaves surged outward, potent enough to annihilate anyone caught in its path, and to level every landmark as far as the eye could see. Inside that gaping maw, there was no ordinary breath or uttered word, only the primeval, violent energy at the very heart of creation, slowly coalescing into a storm of pure force. It was a power beyond mortal comprehension, as fathomless as a black hole, as brilliant as a star's final explosion, warping space itself in ripples like pebbles dropped across a still pond. Even the very air seemed to warp under the force gathering on the battlefield. Two currents of energy, one as black as a moonless night, the other blinding white, hung over the combatants like warring halves of a shattered yin and yang. Their wills clashed, and the energies, no longer content to merely oppose one another, began to spin and gather speed, as if two colossal vortices were being inexorably drawn together in a struggle to consume each other. Above them, the sky convulsed with the fury of those opposing powers. Dark clouds churned, lightning lanced through the heavens, and thunder roared in ominous judgment, as though the world itself trembled at the violence unfolding below. At last, Boros's restraint snapped. With a warrior's cry that shook the earth, he unleashed a primal surge of power, vast enough to swallow worlds whole. It coalesced into a single scintillating beam of light, a lance of pure destruction aimed unerringly at Goju Yagura. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to freeze. All sound was devoured by that incandescent glare, which burned so fiercely it eclipsed every other presence in the world. Then, boom, when Boros's beam slammed into Yagura's own force, the impact ripped the battlefield apart. A mountain-shattering roar heralded the detonation, obliterating everything caught in its path. The air itself seemed to crack under the pressure of their attacks, screaming like a blade through flesh. When the tailed beast jade slammed into Ethan's Xiaobenxing roaring cannon, the entire battlefield ignited in a heart-stopping blaze. The light shot skyward, painting the clouds blood orange, while a visible shockwave radiated in all directions, uprooting ancient pines, shattering boulders, even seeming to stall time itself. Yet despite the fury of the tailed beast's assault, Ethan's power won out. His stellar collapse roar cannon unleashed an unparalleled surge of destruction, enveloping the tailed beast jade in a cyclone of searing energy. Under that brilliant onslaught, the black orb shrank and quivered, its resistance snuffed out like embers in a gale. But the carnage didn't end there. The explosion's aftershock hurtled forward, barreling straight for Goji Yagura. Despair and defiance warred in Goji's chest as he realized the lethal force bearing down on him. There was no time to second-guess, only the cold certainty of survival or utter annihilation. Ethan refused to surrender. Summoning every last reserve of chakra, he strove to counter the onslaught of fatal attacks. But it was hopeless. Before a force capable of erasing the horizon itself, any resistance was pitifully inadequate. With a single, unimaginable strike, the three-tailed Isobu's massive form was rent as though it were paper. Then, with a thunderous roar, the beast collapsed in a cataclysmic explosion, its body scattering into fragments and dust that darkened the sky. Goji Yagura was consumed in the blast, reduced to ashes. Nothing remained. Chapter 942, Boros Massacre of the Hidden Mist Village. A rolling mist had always cloaked the Hidden Mist Village in endless gray, but today its shroud seemed darker than ever, suffused with an almost tangible dread. Villagers moved through the fog in stunned silence, faces ashen, eyes hollow with disbelief. In this moment, it felt as if life itself had drained from their home. At the heart of their despair lay a single, unthinkable truth. Their leader, Yagura Kujitsu, the Water Shadow, and Jinchuriki of the three-tailed beast Isobu, had been slain before their very eyes by an unknown warrior of overwhelming power. One moment, Yagura stood proud, a testament to the village's strength. The next, his life was extinguished, and the world seemed to stand still. Everyone who witnessed that battle would carry its details like scars upon the mind. Yagura had been more than a shinobi. He was their emblem of protection. When he merged completely with Isobu, his form swelled into a towering colossus. The earth trembled beneath his feet, rivers reversed their course, and the fearsome-tailed beast ball crackled with world-ending energy. There was no measure of foe who could stand against such unstoppable force. Yet even all that dread and splendor proved futile against the power Boros unleashed. In an instant, the once invincible Water Shadow fell, and a nightmare was born that none in the Hidden Mist Village would ever forget. Ethan watched in stunned silence as Boros, the otherworldly warrior, unleashed his terrifying power. Though not as colossal as a tailed beast, Boros's aura was so fierce it felt like the air itself was burning. Every blow he struck seemed to tear open reality, reducing all in its path to dust. Then, in midair, two gargantuan waves of energy, each capable of shattering mountains, collided with a thunderous roar that echoed across the battlefield. The assembled shinobi held their breath, bracing for the outcome of this cataclysmic clash. When the smoke cleared, the result was heart-breakingly merciless. Yagura Kujitsu and the Three Tails Isobu sealed within him had been utterly annihilated. In an instant, both man and beast vanished, leaving behind nothing but smoldering debris and a sorrow so deep it threatened to drown everyone present. Yagura's fall was like hurling a boulder into a tranquil lake. Ripples of shock radiated outward, disturbing the fragile calm of the Hidden Mist Village. In the stunned aftermath, old alliances began to fray. Ambitious factions, long kept in check by the Fourth Mizukage's iron rule, now sensed opportunity in the sudden power vacuum. Whispers of rebellion and plots to seize control drifted through the misty streets, promising that a new and even darker chapter was about to unfold. Motivated by fierce loyalty to their homeland, the Hidden Mist Village's shinobi rose in defiance, willing to spill their blood to repel the invader. But Boros's power eclipsed their worst fears. Each swing of his fist cleaved through defenders as effortlessly as the death god's scythe through souls. Even the village's elite, those masters of ninjutsu, taijutsu, and their most clandestine secret arts, proved as delicate as ants beneath his might. their most exalted techniques shattered and fizzled against the cosmic overlord's overwhelming force. Boros strode unchecked through the village, leaving naught but ruin in his wake. With every punch, space itself warped and energy detonated in blinding bursts, pulverizing sturdy walls into drifting ash and snuffing out life without a second's hesitation. Yet, when the dust settled, he paused. Around him lay only devastation. Once proud towers reduced to broken beams, streets littered with shattered stone, and the wails of the wounded fading into the still air. Surveying the carnage, Boros's expression was inscrutable. The hidden mist village, so vibrant a moment before, now lay in tatters. And though his conquest was complete, he did not press on. Instead, he stood amid the ruins, an unchallenged force in a desolate landscape of his own making. The cries for LP wove together into a mournful symphony, but amid these ruins, he felt nothing stirring his desire to fight. The forces that had dared oppose him were, to his eyes, no more than ants, easily crushed. Such invincible solitude left him with an unprecedented emptiness, a crushing boredom. Having confirmed there was no worthy opponent here, the conqueror who once thundered across the universe found no pleasure in mere slaughter. With one last glance over the devastated streets, he turned away, his heavy steps the only sound echoing through the hollow remains of the village. Only after his departure did Hidden Mist Village begin to stir, as if waking from a terrible dream. But reality proved far more cruel. With its elite defenders annihilated, the village's walls lay broken, its previous peace and prosperity shattered forever. Among the rubble, the villagers fought merely to survive. Some bowed their heads in grief-stricken tears, others raised their eyes toward the sky, desperately searching for even a single ray of hope in the gathering darkness. Elder Yuanxi of the Water Country, renowned for both his wisdom and his strength, revealed his calm decisiveness when it mattered most. He recognized that this was the pivotal moment to revive the Hidden Mist Village, and that someone had to rise to lead its people out of despair. Together with his trusted lieutenants, Aoi and Ganbei, Yuanxi emerged from hiding and seized control. Drawing on his reputation and keen judgment, he steadied the villagers' spirits, marshaled the scattered survivors, and set them to the work of rebuilding. At the same time, Yuanxi launched a thorough inquiry into the mysterious assailant known as Boros, seeking both the origin and the purpose of this calamity. "This Boros isn't just a man," he told his council. "He's a moving force of nature, a human-shaped, tailed beast." Yuanxi himself had survived Boros's onslaught by laying low when the demon's power was at its height. Direct confrontation, he knew, would have been like smashing a rock with an egg. Only by waiting for the right moment could the Hidden Mist Village hope to rise again. When Boros finally vanished from sight, Ethan sprang into action. Drawing on his long-earned prestige and keen judgment, he moved swiftly to restore order and assume control of Kirigakure. He understood better than anyone that the village hidden in the mist needed a strong leader to lift it from despair and rebuild its shattered foundations. As the village's elder, the same rank and authority as the Mizukage, Ethan now oversaw every aspect of Kirigakure's affairs. From matters of defense to the daily well-being of its citizens, no significant decision could be made without his counsel. Ever since the fourth Mizukage's death, he had effectively managed the village, earning the unwavering respect of villagers and shinobi alike. At his side stood his two most trusted aides, Ai and Ganbei, further smoothing his transition to power. Elsewhere, Uchiha Obito seethed with rage and frustration. News of the fourth Mizukage Goju Yagura's death reached him like a slap in the face. Yagura had been one of Obito's most vital pawns within Kirigakure, and now with him gone, Obito's carefully laid plans were in chaos. The death of Mizukage Yagura not only derailed his entire plan in Kirigakure, it threatens to set off a chain reaction that could upend the entire shinobi world. Obito Uchiha's clenched fists trembled as he paced. "Damn it, what happened?" Heijue, who'd already pulled up the latest battlefield reports, spoke in a low, stunned voice. A massively powerful warrior calling himself Boros stormed Kirigakure and slaughtered thousands of shinobi. When Yagura completed his transformation into a tailed beast, Boros unleashed an unknown ninjutsu and struck him down instantly. Then the Bijudama, Yagura's own tailed beast sphere, backfired, obliterating both Yagura and the three tails, Isobu. and now that sphere has disappeared without a trace. Obito stared at the ground, speechless. Heijue's words hung in the air like a death knell,